Who hurt you? 3 words from a Mafia boss that sealed her abuser's fate. Nobody ever noticed the makeup Arya used to cover her bruises, until table 7. Leon Varley didn't just ask for wine. He analyzed her like a predator studying prey. When she finally called his number, she unleashed a gang war that burned the city to the ground. This isn't a romance. It's a hostile takeover of her life.
Tonight, you and I are going to step into the quiet devastation of a life hanging by a thread. The camera opens on the sterile glare of a restaurant bathroom. Arya stands frozen. Her trembling fingers is wiping fresh blood from her split lip, and she rehearses a vacant smile, unaware that the man waiting in the dining room is about to shatter her carefully constructed illusion. She has no idea a single question will drag her into the suffocating depths of the criminal underworld. The fluorescent lighting washes the warmth from her skin as pale pink water spirals down the cold porcelain drain. Her physical wound is minor, but her soul is actively hemorrhaging. The lesson here is absolute. You can paint over your trauma for the world, but the mirror never forgets your true reflection. Focus on the shadows pooling under her eyes, a testament to the man waiting at home. Marcus was coldly methodical. After a hospital visit raised red flags last winter, he learned the exact arithmetic of violence. He knew how to strike hard enough to break her spirit without leaving undeniable proof. Arya lowers the damp towel, the lens lingering on the angry purple blossoming across her cheekbone. She scrapes the bottom of her makeup bottle, desperate to bury the nightmare. The cheap concealer only smears, turning the bruise into a sickly shadow. Her hands shake violently as she paints over the brutal damage. The truth we must all eventually accept is this: the monsters in our lives only keep growing when we give them the dark cover of our silence. 2 more hours. The thought beats like a desperate metronome in her chest. She just needs to survive until closing, collect her cash, and rush back before the liquor turns Marcus into something unrecognizable. The heavy door swings inward, shattering the quiet with the arrogant clatter of fine dining. Another waitress steps into the frame, fixes her lipstick, and ghosts right past. Arya lets out a trembling breath, preferring to remain entirely unseen. She smooths her dark uniform, tucking a loose strand of hair into her rigid bun. This world of extreme wealth has zero tolerance for the ugly aesthetic of a broken woman. Hold on to this simple truth. The heaviest armor we ever wear is often just a polite smile, used to convince the whole world that we are not completely falling apart. The camera follows her into a dining room built like an opulent stage. These guests drop her entire monthly rent as a single dinner, treating the staff as nothing more than elegant furniture. Golden light rains down from crystal chandeliers, catching the pristine linen and the heavy perfume of generational wealth. Arya keeps her chin tucked, locking her practiced neutrality into place. She grips a frosted water pitcher, stepping forward as her cheerful hospitality voice slides on like a desperate shield. Good evening. Welcome to. The scripted greeting fin turns to dust in her throat. The solitary man seated at table 7 has not even touched his leather menu. Take note of this simple reality. True power never raises its voice or demands your attention. It just quietly rewrites the gravity of the room. He is staring straight through her. The camera captures his brutal, unblinking focus. His dark eyes snag on her poorly concealed bruise like a sharp hook. He wears a dark, immaculate suit that hums with the dangerous frequency of the criminal underworld. But the wealth is not what makes Arya drop her gaze. It is his terrifying absolute stillness. He sits there dissecting her trauma, reading the violence on her skin like an open book. I will give you a moment, she stammers out, pivoting to escape his suffocating presence. Wait. The word leaves his lips softly, yet it hits her spine like a sniper round. She turns back slowly, her chest violently rising and falling. Here is the lesson we must face. You can run from your demons, but you can never hide from the rare person who finally sees your naked soul. The air turns to ice as the power dynamic shifts. What happened to your face? The raw question strikes her like a physical blow. Her hand shoots up to cover the bruise, a reflex born of terror. Nothing, I am fine, the lighting just. Do not. He places his menu on the table, folding his hands together. I asked a simple question. Who hurt you? The camera holds on her trembling lips. Nobody has ever dared to voice the truth out loud. People always looked away, accepting her lies to keep their own conscience clean. Sir, Her voice shatters completely. She clears her throat, desperately dragging her polite smile out of the grave. Can I get you a drink? He observes her panic, stripping her defenses down to the absolute bone. Here is the truth. True strength only begins the moment you stop denying your own painful reality. Bring me your oldest Bordeaux. The command is a dismissal. She retreats to the dark mahogany bar, her hands vibrating so violently she presses her damp palms against the cold wood to keep from falling apart. Who does this stranger think he is, carving open her secrets? You okay? The bartender's voice breaks her panic. Arya jerks her head up, nodding with frantic brightness. Fine, just tired. Table 7 is asking for you specifically, he murmurs, sliding a wildly expensive bottle across the counter. Guess you made an impression. A sickening knot of dread drops into her stomach. She gathers the dark wine and 2 crystal glasses, her legs feeling like poured concrete as she walks back into the predator's gaze. The lesson is inescapable. You can run all you want, but you can never truly hide from your own destiny. Camera tracks her heavy footsteps. The man speaks rapid Italian into his phone, his tone carrying absolute authority. He cuts the call dead the moment the dark wine hits the crystal. Just 1 glass, he orders. She freezes, pulling the second glass back. Of course. What is your name? Arya. He rolls the name over his tongue. I am Leon. She gives a tight nod, desperate to flee. Is there anything else? Sit down. I cannot. I am on the clock. I own 20% of this establishment, Leon replies, his voice like velvet over shattered glass. Sit down. Arya feels the floor drop out from under her. She sinks into the chair, perched on the edge like a wounded bird ready to bolt. Leon takes a slow sip, his dark eyes never leaving hers. The lesson is simple. When true power speaks, you have no choice but to listen. You and I know the truth always draws blood. How long? The question hangs dead in the air. How long what? How long has someone been hitting you? The camera catches her violent flinch as her armor shatters. I do not. That is not.
I have watched people try to hide ugly things, Arya.
Your performance is decent, but it is not enough. He sets his glass down with lethal precision. Boyfriend? Husband? Why do you even care? Her response is sharp. A shadow shifts across Leon's face. Not anger, but cold calculation, because I despise seeing valuable things broken. He says it like a collector, finding a rare painting a fool carelessly damaged. Arya stands up so fast, the chair screeches across the floor. I need to check my tables. She bolts away, desperate for air. Here is a vital lesson. Your true worth is never defined by the people who try to break you. She spends the hour dodging the stranger who reads the violence on her body. But no matter where she moves, Leon's heavy gaze tracks her. His attention is a physical weight, following her like a shadow. He orders food he barely touches. He nurses the same wine for 60 minutes, using the terrifying patience of a predator to wait her out. By 10:30, The room is mostly empty. Arya is wiping a booth when her phone vibrates against her hip. She checks the cracked screen. Marcus, where are you? The text wraps around her windpipe, like wire. She types back with shaking thumbs. Still at work. Home by 11:30. The reply is instant. Make it 11. Arya wheezes shut, swallowing a sob of pure terror. The lesson is clear. Running from your nightmares only ensures they will be waiting for you in the dark. Pushing back against Marcus would only ignite an explosion. When Arya opens her eyes, Leon is standing silently 3 feet away. She gasps, clutching her chest. You are terrified of whoever you are going home to, Leon says softly. Notice his tone. It is not a question, it is a cold fact. You need to stop, Arya whispers, backing against the table. You do not know anything about my life. I know you are rapidly running out of time. He reaches into his jacket, sliding out a matte black card. This is my private line. When you need a way out, and I say when, not if, you dial it. Arya stares at the card like it is a loaded weapon. I do not need your help. Yes, you do. Leon steps closer, carrying the sharp scent of cedar and raw power. The lesson here? Sometimes the only lifeline strong enough to save you is offered by the devil himself. The camera cuts to the black card resting on the white linen, an omen of what is to come. Leon slips out the doors, vanishing into the night without a wasted motion. Arya is left paralyzed in the empty dining room. She snatches the card, shoving it into her apron as if it might burn her. The rest of the evening dissolves into a hollow blur. She counts out her crumpled bills before sprinting to her rusted car at 11:20. As she jams the key into the ignition, her phone violently breaks the silence. It is Marcus. His words are thick with cheap whiskey, a low growl reminding her that she is late. Tonight, his intoxication will entirely dictate her physical survival. Take this lesson to heart. Time is the one fragile currency you can never negotiate when you are locked in a cage with a monster. Let us look at the heavy psychological weight of this moment together. Arya speeds toward her apartment, her knuckles white on the wheel. A powerful crime boss just read her deepest insecurities with terrifying clarity. The lesson here is simple. The most horrifying experience is not being hated, but being fully understood by someone who thrives in the shadows. She parks outside the decaying building she shares with her volatile boyfriend, taking 30 agonizing seconds to gather her nerve. Climbing the concrete stairs, she finds the front door unlocked. That single detail sends her stomach plummeting. Inside, the television casts a harsh, ghostly blue glow across the walls. The scene perfectly mirrors the dread pooling in her chest, capturing a profound sense of total entrapment. Marcus is slumped across the torn sofa, an empty whiskey bottle anchoring the dark energy of the room. He fixes her with a hollow stare and snaps that she kept him waiting. Arya attempts to defuse the ticking bomb, offering quiet excuses about a grueling shift, but he rises, swaying in the cold television light, demanding to know whose bed she was in. The takeaway here is vital. You can never use logic to dismantle someone else's paranoid delusions. Marcus closes the distance in 3 heavy strides, burying his fingers into her bare skin. The sour stench of alcohol washes over her. When she begs for release, the violence erupts. He strikes her cheek with enough force to snap a neck back, delivering a brutal, physical reminder of her absolute captivity. Focus on the sensory shock of this scene. Arya tastes the sharp copper of her own blood, while Marcus continues his relentless verbal assault. Suddenly, her phone pierces the room like an air raid siren. Marcus snatches the device from her bag with manic aggression, his eyes wide with unfounded suspicion. Seeing a male name glowing on the screen pushes him over the edge. Arya pleads with him, explaining it is only her brother Ethan. But the truth means nothing to a man hunting for a reason to rage. He forces the call onto the speaker, filling the small room with Ethan's shattered voice. Her brother sounds completely hollowed out, choking on genuine terror. The lesson here is profound. Life has a brutal way of exposing your true enemies the exact moment your loved ones face mortal danger. Marcus stands over her, dripping with arrogance, and tells Ethan his sister is doing fine. It is a sickening display of casual cruelty. A suffocating silence stretches across the line before Ethan speaks. His voice is a hollow rasp as he confesses his failure to fix a catastrophic mistake. He begs Arya to stay far away from him, and then the call abruptly ends. Arya feels the warmth drain entirely from her body. Instead of showing an ounce of empathy, Marcus barks out a harsh laugh and throws the phone at her chest, dismissing her brother's terror as dramatic nonsense. She scrambles to dial the number again, only to hit a cold, automated voicemail. Hear this vital lesson. When someone you love begs you to stay away, that is the exact moment they need your protection the absolute most. Adrenaline shatters her paralysis. Arya snatches her bag and makes a break for the door, but Marcus clamps his hand around her wrist like a vise. She screams that her brother is in danger, yet he only sneers. But here we witness a fundamental shift. When primal survival takes over, hesitation dies. Arya violently twists her arm, breaking his grip with everything she has left, and bolts. She ignores his furious shouts echoing down the stairwell as she throws herself into her car and floors the accelerator. She races toward the decaying industrial district, gripping the wheel until her knuckles ache. The lesson is simple and true. Never let a toxic presence hold you back from protecting your own blood. She arrives at the complex, only to find Ethan's front door hanging wide open to the night. Sprints up 3 flights of concrete stairs, her lungs burning. The door to Ethan's apartment gapes open like a fresh wound. Stepping inside, she enters a zone of complete devastation. Chairs are splintered, drawers emptied, and the television is shattered across the floor. This was not a random robbery. Someone systematically dismantled the room, searching for something specific. Trembling, she creeps into the bedroom and is met with a living nightmare. The mattress is violently overturned, but the wall steals her breath entirely. A massive, bloody handprint is dragged straight down the peeling paint. The lesson here is stark. Sometimes the universe forces you completely to your knees just so you finally realize the true weight of what you really stand to lose. Stick with me, because this is where the psychological flaw completely drops out. Arya clings to the doorframe to stay upright when her phone vibrates. An unknown number flashes on the screen. She answers with shaking hands, and a chillingly calm voice greets her by her full name. It is the unmistakable tone of a syndicate enforcer. He casually explains that Ethan provided the number and is still breathing. She demands answers, her heart battering against her ribs. The man sighs, treating human collateral like routine paperwork. Ethan tried to steal from them, accumulated a massive debt, and now his life is forfeit. Here is a brutal reality check. The reckless mistakes of the people we love will almost always find their way to our own front doorstep. Fighting through a tightening throat, Arya asks the fatal question, how much? The enforcer delivers a devastating blow. $50,000. The number crushes her. She is barely surviving and cries out that she does not possess that kind of money. The voice shifts into something far more sinister, noting that she has other ways to clear the ledger. They will keep Ethan until the debt is satisfied. The line clicks dead. She stands alone in a blood-stained room, realizing her ordinary life is completely over. The scene cuts to 2 in the morning. Arya stands beneath a flickering street lamp, staring at a black business card bearing the name Leon Varley. Listen closely to this lesson. Sometimes your only path to salvation arrives wrapped in a package of absolute, terrifying danger. Calling a syndicate boss like Leon is like inviting a tiger into your home to hunt rats. But when every other door is locked, the darkest shadows start to look like a sanctuary. Arya dials the number, met by a subordinate before that chilling, deep baritone takes over. Leon simply states that he is listening. Instantly, her defensive shell shatters. She breaks down, her voice cracking as she reminds him of his previous offer. Leon shifts into the cold efficiency of a ruler, demanding the facts. She pours out the entire miserable story. The abusive boyfriend, the bloody handprint, and the $50,000 ransom. The profound lesson here is undeniable. Hitting absolute rock bottom completely strips away your pride and makes you fully willing to bargain with the devil himself. She stands alone in the freezing night, spilling her fears. Leon allows the silence to stretch, weaponizing the quiet before instructing her to stay exactly where she is. A car is coming. When she asks what he intends to do, his response is an unshaken promise to handle it. Then, the true nature of his world is revealed. He informs her that salvation carries a heavy price. If he erases her brother's debt, she will belong entirely to him. That single condition is a massive warning sign. But Arya is so utterly broken by the night's events that she simply whispers her agreement into the dark. Pay attention, because this is a vital lesson. Sometimes we willingly sacrifice our own freedom just to ensure the people we love keep breathing. He praises her obedience, and her fate is sealed forever. The connection severs, leaving her alone in the freezing dark. 20 agonizing minutes pass before a black luxury sedan glides to a stop. 2 men emerge wearing tailored suits, moving with the silent grace of apex predators. These are not local enforcers. These are the phantoms who make problems disappear. The taller man taps on her glass, and she numbly unlocks the door. He offers a flat command to follow. Slipping into the back seat, she is wrapped in the scent of rich leather. The windows are heavily tinted, cutting her off from the outside world. They drive in total silence through the sleeping city, heading toward the abandoned waterfront. Here is our final lesson together. Once you step over the dark threshold into the criminal underworld, there is absolutely no returning to the light. Let us look at this piece by piece, shall we? Picture the stark waterfront. Outside, decaying warehouses rot in the damp air. Inside, a labyrinth of unchecked wealth. Arya walks between silent men in tailored suits, clutching her worn handbag like a shield as the elevator ascends. The doors part, revealing an expanse of dark wood and floor-to-ceiling glass overlooking the black water. Leon stands by the window, hands pocketed, completely still in the moonlight. With one subtle gesture, his guards vanish. Arya is left in the suffocating silence of a predator's sanctuary. The lesson here is simple but profound. True power never feels the need to shout its presence. It simply waits for you in the dark, perfectly confident that you will eventually come. Watch how Leon commands the room. He never raises his voice. He simply glides into Arya's personal space, radiating the cold gravity of a man who dictates life and death. He stares into her terrified eyes and demands the truth. Beneath that pressure, she finally crumbles. She spills every frantic detail of Ethan's destructive spiral: the gambling, the wrecked apartment, the impossible $50,000 ransom. Leon absorbs this confession like carved stone. Not a single muscle twitches. Then he shatters her reality. He reveals that Ethan attempted to steal from the vicious Volkov crime family. It is a sobering truth. No matter how tightly you lock your doors, the reckless choices made by the people you love will always find a way to crash right into your living room. To cross the Volkov syndicate is to invite a ghost into your home. Arya spirals into panic, weeping as she pleads her innocence. Leon remains perfectly unaffected. He casually pours a glass of aged scotch, the liquid catching the dim light. He forces her to look at reality. The Volkovs never negotiate, and Ethan is likely a memory. The true terror is what they plan for her. As Arya collapses under the weight of her ruin, Leon takes a deliberate sip. He knows she has nothing, but he possesses the power to intervene. Her sheer desperation has caught his eye. He offers protection, provided she obeys his absolute authority without question. It teaches us a difficult truth. When life throws you a lifeline in a desperate storm, you must always accept the heavy iron chains attached to it. Leon locks his dark gaze with hers, shifting into the role of a king demanding absolute fealty. He outlines the terms with chilling precision. She must surrender her autonomy entirely. In return, he will retrieve her brother, neutralize Marcus, and erase her name from the syndicate's ledger. Arya's mind races against the invisible walls of this impossible bargain. She trembles, asking how long she must remain his prisoner. His answer is a definitive strike, until the work is finished. She has just traded one monster for a beautifully dressed devil. But there is a very practical lesson embedded in this tragic exchange. When you are drowning in the violent currents of the deep end, you do not question the color of the life raft keeping your head above the water. You simply hold on. A gilded cage is still a cage. Leon guides her to a master suite so vast it makes her former life look like a discarded memory. Arya stands paralyzed at the threshold, overwhelmed by the panoramic windows and an enormous silk bed. When Leon notes his men will fetch her belongings tomorrow, the finality strikes her hard. She stammers about her old life, her routines, her fragile normalcy. Leon severs that connection instantly. His voice, smooth but lethal, informs her that the past is dead. She is never going back. When she fearfully asks what will happen to Marcus, his silent, predatory stare is the only answer she needs. It teaches us a brutal but necessary truth. Sometimes stepping into a brand new chapter of your life requires setting the entire previous book on fire. You and I know that specific brand of 3 a.m. silence, the kind where the world stops, leaving you alone with the deafening echoes of your own mistakes. Leon taps his gold watch, instructing her to sleep. Before the heavy door swings shut, he delivers a calculated warning. Fleeing is useless. Cameras watch every shadow, and his guards keep her locked away for her own preservation. The lock engages with the echoing thud of a bank vault. It perfectly illustrates how safety and captivity are often just two sides of the exact same coin. A beautiful prison is still a prison. As absolute panic grips her chest, Arya scrambles into the marble bathroom. She turns the shower on full blast, letting the roar of the scalding water drown out the sounds of her breaking psyche. Arya stands trembling under the scalding spray, desperately trying to wash away the grim reality of a night that altered her destiny. She steps out and slides into a soft silk nightgown left on the pristine bedding. She stares up at the dark ceiling, fiercely determined to keep her eyes open. But trauma is a heavy anchor, dragging her down into exhaustion. When her eyes snap open, brilliant morning sunlight floods the room, For a merciful second, her brain tricks her into believing everything is normal. Then, the crushing weight of truth drops. Ethan is marked for death, and she is the property of a crime lord. We must confront this heavy truth. No matter how brightly the morning sun shines, it cannot ever erase the devastating mistakes you made at midnight. Defeated, she slowly reaches for her phone. The screen is a digital monument to toxic obsession. She finds missed calls and erratic messages from Marcus, swinging wildly between pathetic apologies and unhinged rage. In a quiet act of rebellion, Arya deletes the thread. That tiny taste of control is shattered by a sharp knock. An older woman named Elena enters, carrying a silver breakfast tray. Elena moves with the calculated grace of someone who knows exactly where the bodies are buried. Her sharp gaze analyzes the frightened girl. She notes Leon ordered the food. The rich scent of dark coffee fills the room, offering a fleeting sense of peace. It is a classic rule of the human experience. The universe often hands you a warm, comforting cup of coffee right before it unleashes a devastating hurricane on your life. Leon will not return until the afternoon. Elena looks at Arya, radiating a quiet, crushing judgment. She gestures to the closet, noting fresh clothes are waiting, and adds that someone expects her in the living room before vanishing. You and I both know nothing destroys an appetite like the gnawing acid of pure anxiety. Arya forces down a few bites of breakfast, tasting nothing. Inside the massive closet, she finds designer clothing perfectly tailored to her exact measurements, a terrifying sign of Leon's endless reach. Dressed in a thick sweater, she ventures out. Bathed in daylight, the penthouse feels less like a mausoleum. She steps into the living area and freezes. A stranger sits on the sofa, aggressively typing on a laptop. The lesson we must learn here is remarkably clear. The deadliest predators in this world rarely look like actual monsters. This stranger possesses the sharp, angular features of a man designed to survive in ruthless corporate warfare. He closes his laptop and introduces himself as David Crane. When Arya questions his role in this dark empire, David flashes a hollow smile. He claims the title of legal counsel, but hints at resolving sensitive complications. We recognize a syndicate fixer when we see one. He motions for her to sit, shifting the topic to Ethan. Panic rising, Arya begs to know if her brother is alive. David sighs, explaining the Volkov family is retaliating violently. He demands a complete history of Ethan's movements. Pay close attention to this tense dynamic. When dangerously powerful men ask you to surrender your secrets, they already know the answers. They are merely testing to see if you are foolish enough to lie. David begins a rapid interrogation, dissecting Ethan's underworld ties. Arya stumbles, insisting they lived separate lives. But David is relentless, prying into the cracks of her memory. Reluctantly, the dam breaks. She details Ethan's pathetic pleas for cash, his spiraling gambling debts, the loan sharks, and his suffocating paranoia. Betraying blood leaves a bitter taste, but holding on to toxic loyalty will only drag you into the grave beside them. David types methodically, his expression an unreadable mask. Then he pauses, delivering a revelation that changes everything. Ethan was not just a helpless addict, he was a street-level courier. As Arya processes this, David lands the final blow. Ethan recently escalated his ambitions, running illicit packages directly for the Volkov crime syndicate. David leans forward, the air turning suffocatingly dense. He warns the situation is far worse than she imagines. When Arya asks for the extent of the damage, David hesitates. In this brutal line of work, a fixer's silence is more terrifying than a drawn weapon. He reveals the fatal error. Ethan was tasked with transporting $80,000 in cash. Instead, he delivered an empty bag and vanished. The Volkovs want their money. Arya's blood runs cold as she realizes the $50,000 ransom was merely an opening bid for her brother's life. David confirms her fears, but assures her Leon holds cards the enemy cannot see. He commands her to stay hidden and cut ties with her ex. The grim takeaway? In this shadowy underworld, reckless curiosity does not just kill the cat, it digs a shallow grave for your entire family. Let us look closely at the lighting here, you and I. See how the shadows cling to David. We are watching a masterclass in quiet, suffocating control. Notice the stillness of his hands. No yelling, just the crushing weight of a man whose business is erasing human lives. He holds Arya's gaze, his eyes dead and unblinking, and calmly shatters her reality. He murmurs that Marcus is gone, wiped from the board, while he frantically begs the police for help. David closes his laptop with a soft, fatal click, orders her to remain, and steps out, pulling all the air from the room with him. The tragic lesson we learn too late is that safety and captivity share the exact same foundation. The very hands dragging you from the wreckage are often the ones locking the door behind you. The camera pulls back, leaving Arya stranded in a vast ocean of velvet and gold. It is a stunning penthouse, yet every gleaming surface feels like the bars of a magnificent cage, one where Leon guards the only key. Elena guides her through the freezing marble of the kitchen, the hollow echo of a grand library, the pristine, untouched gym. Listen to the dreadful silence of the place. It is a luxury hotel built solely for ghosts. Elena smiles softly, noting the permanently sealed windows and the coded elevator, spinning these iron chains as mere protection. Arya's fingers tremble against her dress, begging her own mind to believe she is a guest, not a captive. Yet the hardest truth we ever face is that the most lethal traps are the ones we willingly mistake for sanctuary. Elena pauses at the threshold, a single, pitying glance, and she slips away. The lock engages with a heavy thud, and the resulting silence is so absolute it rings in Arya's ears. She tries the television, but the burst of sound makes her flinch, her bruised mind rejecting the noise. She collapses by the towering glass panes, watching the meaningless crawl of traffic far below. Then the shrill scream of her phone shatters the quiet. Leon's voice bleeds through the speaker, low and measured, asking how she fares. She swallows her terror, whispering a lie that she is fine, only for him to demand her obedience. It is a brutal reality of survival. Even when your entire universe burns to the ground, the cold, heavy machinery of the world keeps violently turning without you. Leon's command is casual, ordering her to dinner at 7. When a trembling Arya asks why, his answer drops like an anvil. Because he said so. It is the terrifying, unfiltered grace of an apex predator circling his prey. As dusk falls, casting violet shadows, Elena returns bearing a garment bag. Inside hangs a breathtaking black dress, the silk woven like armor for psychological warfare. Arya steps into it, staring at her reflection. She is a fragile pawn placed upon a pitch-black board. The true horror creeps over her slowly. The fabric hugs every curve flawlessly. Leon had her measured while she lay unconscious. It is a chilling awakening. Absolute vulnerability is realizing you are completely mapped and known by the very monster holding your fragile existence in his hands. Watch the brushstrokes. Elena's hands move with surgical precision, painting over the deep purple bruise on Arya's cheek. In the vanity mirror, Arya stares at a wealthy, polished ghost. The broken, weeping girl from yesterday is buried beneath layers of expensive powder. On the strike of 7, the heavy oak door clicks. Leon steps into the frame, clad in a masterfully tailored suit. His gaze slowly traces her silhouette, heavy and consuming, his voice a low rumble, praising her beauty. She whispers a hollow thank you, letting him guide her toward the terrace. You and I have seen this desperate survival tactic before. Sometimes, painting a flawless mask and dining with the devil is the only way to conceal the violent, terrified trembling of an exhausted, bleeding heart. The camera sweeps across the terrace, the glittering harbor stretching out below like spilled diamonds. A single table is bathed in the amber glow of candlelight, casting agonizing shadows. The forced romance hangs in the air, suffocating our ear. Leon pulls out a chair. His massive frame blocks the moon. He pours a dark crimson vintage, his voice smooth as glass, promising he will never bring her physical pain. When she whispers that his vow does not erase her terror, his mouth curls into a chilling smirk. The pleasantries die instantly. The Volkov family is encroaching on his empire. It is a sobering reminder of human darkness. The most lethal threats in this world do not scream their violent intentions. They whisper them over a glass of expensive wine. Leon's tone turns glacial. He details how the Volkovs have grown arrogant, casting aside the ancient, blood-stained codes. He has been waiting in the dark for a spark to ignite a war. Her brother, Ethan, is the match. Watch Arya's breath hitch. Her blood runs cold, the horrifying realization twisting her stomach. Her family is the trigger for a massacre. Leon leans in, his unblinking stare freezing her soul. Ethan is no mere excuse. He is the ultimate bargaining chip. The Volkovs think they sit on the throne. Blind to the strings, Leon pulls behind the curtain. When Arya begs him to use that leverage to spare her brother, his refusal is absolute. He will let them taste false victory first. True patience is the most devastating weapon when wielded by a devil playing the long game. His gaze pierces straight through her fragile shell. Leon speaks of ruin, vowing to burn his rivals to ash. He states plainly that in this pitch-black underworld, the righteous die first. Victory belongs only to the man willing to outmonster the beasts at the gate. Elena ghosts into the frame, setting down exquisite food that Arya cannot even look at. Her throat swollen with dread. Leon smoothly pivots. He notes her silence regarding Marcus. He casually mentions her abuser, sniffing around her apartment, only to face 3 heavily armed enforcers. They promised Marcus war if he ever sought her again. It is a suffocating burden to carry. When you let a dangerous predator slaughter your demons, you trade a piece of your own soul that can never be bought back. The crystal glass catches the candlelight as Leon takes a slow, deliberate sip. He smiles. Marcus understood the threat perfectly. Arya's shoulders begin to violently tremble. She whispers that Marcus will run straight to the police. Leon snuffs out that panic instantly. His men played Marcus, a private movie, months of hallway security footage, every vicious strike, every drunken threat, recorded. Leon promised to mail it all to the detectives if her abuser even breathed her name. He dismisses the man as a pathetic coward folding under real pressure. Let us be deeply honest with ourselves. You and I, we all harbor that dark, desperate wish to watch our tormentors drown in the exact same blinding terror they fed us when we were too broken to scream. Notice how the camera lingers on her locked joints. Leon studies her panic like a scientist observing a moth on a pin. Arya's hollow eyes are glued to the dancing flame. She whispers to the dark that she does not know what to say. Leon needs her to comprehend the jagged edges of his world. He is the architect here, writing every bloody law. He leans into the gold light, shadows pooling beneath his jaw, and asks what her heart demands. She weeps for Ethan's safety, begging to know her own fate. Leon's gaze softens into something tragic. He praises her talent for surviving a brute by becoming invisible. It is the cruelest paradox of our lives. The exact trauma that breaks our bones often forges the steel we need to survive the longest nights. Her voice cracks, asking what a broken thing like her could offer a king. Leon speaks with quiet reverence. His dark empire requires absolute loyalty. He needs watchful eyes who memorize a room and swallow their tongues. He genuinely sees a crown on her head. Then, he slides a terrifying choice across the table. When the turf war ends, she can take a fortune and vanish, or she can stay in the shadows and learn to wield absolute power. Drowning in the gravity of it, she begs to know why he picked her. His stone face breaks into a fleeting, sorrowful warmth, because she refused to shelter the coward who broke her. Life is a twisted play. The choices that forge our ultimate destiny are almost never handed to us in the safe, forgiving light of the sun. The air between them is heavy enough to crush lungs. Leon murmurs that her silent terror masks the iron spine buried beneath her scars. A tear tracks down her cheek as she refuses, swearing she will never join his crusade. The devil just offers a tragic, knowing smile. He tells her the law is a myth in his world. He does not need her finger on a trigger. He desires the sharp edge of her mind. The meal ends in perfect silence. Rising to his full height, Leon extends his scarred hand and softly asks her to walk. Like a dreamer surrendering to the tide, her fingers slip into his without a thought. The dark is terrifying, but sometimes plummeting into the abyss feels exactly like taking flight, right up until the moment you shatter against the earth. Let us step onto this terrace together, you and I, and observe the shattered city lights below. The night air is bitter, catching Leon's coat as he guides Arya to the railing. Here, he strips away his armor. He speaks of a suffocating childhood, his voice hollow, as he describes watching his father break his mother until her spirit vanished. By 12, staring at bruised hands, Leon swore a blood oath. Arya watches his jaw tighten, seeing the terrified boy hiding beneath the ruthless kingpin. When she whispers, asking how he survived the abyss, his eyes stay dead. He learned the architecture of power, and he waited. True strength is never a frantic lash of anger. It is the painful discipline of waiting in the dark until the exact moment arrives to strike. Silence stretches between them. Leon confesses that the moment a window for power cracked open, he seized it without a flinch. He turns his dark gaze onto Arya, delivering a crushing blow to her reality. She stands on a precipice, forced to either bleed out or clench her fists and fight. Arya attempts to hold her tough facade, but he challenges the bluff. She has worn trauma like a lead vest. For so long, she no longer knows her own reflection. Her walls finally shatter. Weeping, she begs for time. Leon releases her hand and melts into the shadows, granting her until dawn to prepare for a brutal interrogation about Marcus Pommus. The most terrifying war we ever face is looking into our own mirror. Confronting the agonizing truth is the only genuine path to the light. Leon delivers a chilling vow. Every detail she remembers about Marcus will be weaponized for absolute destruction. Retreating inside, Arya slips into a bedroom that feels more like a velvet cage than a sanctuary. Staring at the ceiling, she tries to picture a future where she no longer shrinks herself to stay alive. Healing is never a simple line. It is a violent war against our own twisted survival instincts. Suddenly, the harsh buzz of her phone shatters the quiet. A cryptic text illuminates her face. 9 in the morning. Be ready. We are going out. She stares at the glowing screen until her final defenses crumble, weeping into the suffocating silence. True growth is pure agony. Sometimes you must let the bitter tears fall completely before you can ever rebuild your foundation. She begs for sleep, but morning is unforgiving. At 8, a knock shatters the quiet. The boss arrives in 30 minutes. Arya hides inside a faded sweater, clutching it like a shield. Stepping out, she freezes. Leon stands there, stripped of his imposing Mafia armor. In a scuffed leather jacket, he looks dangerously human. Down in the garage, a plain grey sedan waits. To her shock, he gently pulls the passenger door open, a gesture of rare respect. Stick with me here, because you and I both know a fundamental truth. It is exactly within these small, unguarded moments of ordinary grace where profound trust actually begins to take root. Slipping behind the wheel, he steers through the dense city traffic with the absolute silence of a ghost. The car stops before a forgotten diner, a rusting relic from another lifetime. Inside, the heavy air reeks of burnt coffee and grease. They slide into an isolated booth like strangers seeking shelter from a storm. When Arya asks why he brought her here, Leon stirs his coffee with mechanical precision. He needed her to breathe, he states softly, and he needed her to realize he is not a monster. She attempts a fragile denial, but Leon locks onto her eyes, slicing straight through the lie. Here is a sobering reality. You can never mask your deepest fears from a man intimately acquainted with the dark. He bluntly confesses that he feels the silent terror radiating off her skin every single time he steps into a room. The heavy psychological tension sitting between them hums like a live wire. The camera tightens on Leon. He knows she is waiting for his mask to slip, expecting a monster like Marcus. Arya freezes, whispering he is nothing like her ex. Leaning across the table, Leon delivers a brutal psychological blow. He clarifies that he is actually far worse. Marcus was a slave to uncontrollable rage, whereas Leon dismantles, lives out of cold, calculated necessity. He calmly states he has never raised a hand without a logical reason. The haunting truth is this. The most dangerous souls walking this earth are always the most highly disciplined. Their plates arrive, but Arya is too nauseous to eat. Abruptly shifting gears, Leon demands the truth about her brother, Ethan. He is risking a massive syndicate war, and he must know if this man is truly worth spilling blood over. The past finally peels away. Her voice trembles as she recalls how Ethan acted as a human shield against their father's explosive rage. Her brother possessed a brilliant mind, dreaming of teaching. That dream shattered the night a drunk driver killed their parents. Ethan abandoned a scholarship, breaking his body in grueling jobs just so Arya could finish school. It brings us to a devastating realization. Massive sacrifice is a crushing emotional burden, and eventually the weight of it will break the person carrying it. Tears spill as she admits her darkest fear, that Ethan secretly despises her. Once he ensured she would survive, his mind snapped, drowning his potential in liquor and gambling. He shoved her away, and in that terrifying void, Marcus stepped into her life. Arya stares blankly at her cold food, consumed by guilt. She whispers she should have fought harder to save the brother who sacrificed everything for her. Leon pushes his coffee aside, his voice slicing through her self-hatred. He reminds her she was barely surviving her own nightmares, stating firmly that Ethan's mistakes belong to Ethan alone. When she brokenly asks why the guilt continues to suffocate her, Leon delivers a painfully resonant truth. He observes that it is always the purest souls who convince themselves the brokenness of the world is their fault. Tossing cash onto the table, he announces their final destination. They drive deep into a decaying industrial shipping yard. Approaching a desolate warehouse, Leon punches a code into a hidden keypad and a massive steel door groans wide open. Let us step inside the shadows and unpack this reveal together. From the outside, the building is a rotting shell, but the second they cross the threshold, the lighting shifts. They enter a highly sophisticated command center. Keyboards clack, files are sorted, and operatives hustle beneath blinding lights. Then, the camera pans to Simone. She is a striking woman radiating a dangerous competence that demands immediate respect. She casually notes she did not expect the boss today. Leon offers a rare smirk, explaining he is showing Arya one of his legitimate operations. The deeper, poetic lesson in this scene is undeniably clear. The most ordinary facades almost always conceal the darkest secrets, and every single one of us wears a carefully crafted mask just to survive the harsh reality of this brutal world. The tension shifts instantly when Simone's sharp eyes lock onto Arya. Slicing through the silence, Simone announces they should have a hard location tonight. Arya feels her heart stop, gasping. She begs to know if they have actually located Ethan. Simone reveals the rival Volkov family has him stashed in a river warehouse. Leon offers a slow, dangerous nod. A sharp grin spreads across Simone's face as she notes the enemy panicking, scrambling to decide whether to negotiate or fight now that Leon is involved. Let them wonder, Leon whispers, guiding Arya back to the car. The suspense inside the vehicle is suffocating. She asks if he is truly going to save her brother. He coolly replies that he gave his word. Never forget this life lesson. A quiet promise from a truly dangerous man is worth far more than gold. Yet, she is left wondering why he is risking everything. Leon merges into the neon traffic, his profile shaded by sorrow. Let us pause here, because you and I both know a harsh life lesson. The deepest wounds are always inflicted by the exact people supposed to protect us. His deep voice shatters the silence, bringing up his brutal father. Then, he drops a massive twist. At 15, he waited for the man to pass out drunk. He placed a plastic bag over his head, prepared to end the nightmare. But his own mother ripped him away, angry at her son instead of the abuser. She shipped Leon to an uncle, who taught him that violence is just a cold tool. Leon looks at Arya with tragic eyes, confessing that her nightmare dragged him straight back to the agony of being a helpless kid trapped in the dark. The emotional gravity of this bleak confession is chilling. Look closely at how this scene is constructed. Sitting in the shadows of the quiet garage, Leon drops an emotional bombshell. He tells Arya he recognizes the haunted look hiding inside her eyes. She sits paralyzed. This man is the Grim Reaper of the underworld, yet instead of treating her like a pawn, he makes her feel seen. She whispers a quiet thank you, grateful he has not treated her like garbage. Leon responds with a profound life lesson. He looks her dead in the eye and swears she is not broken. She is simply bent, and there is a massive difference between the two. It is a poetic truth. Sometimes the people who appear the most dangerous are the ones who understand our scars the best. He walks off into the freezing night, leaving her breathless, drowning in questions about the path ahead. The afternoon light drains from the room, leaving Arya trapped in a suffocating quiet. She pushes cold food across porcelain, her mind consumed by her brother Ethan. The heavy oak door swings open at 10 o'clock. Leon stands there. He looks completely hollowed out, yet his eyes burn with a dangerous, violent energy. He tells her they found Ethan down at Pier 17. The strike is set for dawn. Arya bolts up, demanding to fight alongside them, but Leon freezes her with a single look. His stare is pure ice. He orders her to stay locked away while he handles the blood. He swears he will bring the boy home. You and I know how impossible it is to just sit and wait. But sometimes letting the monsters work is the only way to save the people you love. Arya stares at him, desperate to shatter his stone exterior with a scream. But the camera lingers on Leon, rigid and immovable as a graveyard monument. She bites her tongue until she tastes copper and gives a slow, submissive nod. Deep down, however, a wild and dangerous idea takes hold. Leon tells her to sleep, warning her that tomorrow will drown them all in violence. Of course, the bedroom offers no peace. She stares into the pitch-black ceiling, listening to distant sirens bleeding through the city air. When dawn finally crawls over the horizon, thick grey clouds batter her window with rain. It is a cold, devastating picture, yet holding onto a tiny sliver of hope when the sky threatens to crush you is exactly how you survive the longest nights of your life. The struggle for sleep ends hours before the sun even bothers to show its face. By 6:30 in the morning, Arya is pacing the hardwood floor, wearing a panicked rhythm into the silence. At 7 o'clock, the hallway doors part, and the air immediately drops 10 degrees. Leon steps into the pale morning light, strapped into heavy black canvas and steel. He looks less like a man and more like a walking execution. He shoves a plate toward her, ignoring her hollow protests, ordering her to eat something. She forces down a bite of dry bread while he scrolls through his phone without a blink. It is funny how in the middle of a total breakdown, forcing yourself to chew a piece of toast can be the one tiny anchor keeping your mind from completely washing away. The oppressive quiet finally cracks when Arya demands to know his schedule. Leon barely looks up, stating they roll out at 3 o'clock to hit the docks by dusk. Let us stop and look at this frame together. The lighting is harsh, cutting across Leon's face as he orders her to stay bolted inside the penthouse, no matter what she hears. Arya trembles, her voice cracking as she asks the fate question of what happens if he dies out there. He does not flinch. He just calmly names his second in command, David, before swearing on his life that Ethan will come home. She desperately wants to trust the warmth in his words. But when you grow up terrified and alone, figuring out who is actually willing to bleed for you is the hardest puzzle you will ever try to solve. Arya gives a slow, empty nod, her eyes darting away just fast enough to betray her brewing rebellion. Leon watches her shadow against the wall, reading the lie before turning back into his office. The hours stretch into a brutal, maddening crawl. Right at 3 o'clock, the heavy doors slide open. Leon steps out, flanked by 3 towering men. They wear unmarked black gear, carrying enough steel to start a war. Their faces are totally blank. Leon holds her gaze one last time, delivering a final warning to stay put, and then they are gone. The massive penthouse instantly turns into a high-altitude prison. Waiting quietly sounds like the smart move, but when your blood is on the line, doing something crazy often feels like the only way to keep yourself breathing. 20 minutes of dead silence is all it takes to break her. Arya tears into the massive closet, swapping her clothes for black cotton and dark boots. She grabs a cheap prepaid phone, her mind zeroed in on Pier 17. The irony here is beautiful. She spent 2 rough years working near those rotting docks. She knows every blind spot. Her only real problem is breaking out of this glass fortress. The elevator keypad blinks red, waiting for a pin she never memorized. Suddenly, she pictures Elena, the exhausted housekeeper. Someone working those long hours would absolutely leave a cheat sheet lying around. Paying attention to the quiet, invisible people around you can absolutely save your life when everything goes wrong. The marble kitchen becomes a disaster zone. Arya rips open heavy drawers, her hands shaking as she throws silverware aside. 15 agonizing minutes later, her fingers brush against a frayed notebook tucked behind the coffee filters. The master codes. She scrawls the numbers into her palm, runs back to the elevator, and punches them in. The steel doors glide apart with a soft hiss. The ride down to the garage feels like falling into a grave. She expects guns drawn when the doors open, but the concrete basement is completely dead. Nothing but shadows and a row of expensive cars. She drops into a dark sports car and hits the gas. Sometimes, diving headfirst into the dark is the only real way to protect the ones you love. The engine screams as Arya launches the car up the ramp, tearing into the rain-soaked streets. Adrenaline floods her veins, drowning out the fear. It takes half an hour to fight through the downtown traffic. She dumps the car behind some rusted shipping containers and steps out into the biting wind. The sky bruises purple, dumping freezing rain down her collar. She slips through the narrow alleys until she sees it, a crumbling metal warehouse surrounded by a ring of dark cars. Just as she ducks behind a crate, the main doors scream open, spilling 3 silhouettes out into the heavy rain. True bravery is not feeling fearless. It is feeling utterly terrified and refusing to take a single step backward. Here is where the picture changes. Through the green, the figures come into sharp focus. It is Leon and his top enforcer, Simone. They are dragging a bloodied man through the mud. Arya feels the bottom drop out of her stomach. It is not her brother. She flattens herself against the brick, trying to make sense of the nightmare. Leon leans over the broken man, his lips moving in a quiet, deadly rhythm. The captive shakes his head. Leon gives a tiny nod. Simone instantly whips her gun across the man's temple. He drops like a stone. Arya bites into her hand to kill the scream in her throat. You have to wonder about blind loyalty. People will gladly destroy themselves just to protect a monster in the dark. Simone pulls her arm back for a second strike, but Leon gently raises one finger to stop her. You and I need to watch his face here. This chilling calmness is exactly why he owns the city. Real power speaks in whispers. Leon crouches low in the muck, slipping a silver knife from his boot. He offers the bleeding man a simple deal. Give up the location, or Simone will call your wife and make her listen to what happens next. That threat is a masterstroke of terror. The man instantly shatters. Sobbing into the dirt, he confesses that Ethan was hauled away hours ago. He screams the name Volkov, begging for mercy. Everybody likes to act tough, but finding the one person somebody truly loves is the absolute fastest way to rip their armor to pieces. Simone steps right on the man's throat, demanding to know exactly who is pulling the strings. Leon moves closer, and the unspoken violence radiating from him practically burns through the cold rain. The sophisticated boss is gone now. He is pure, unhinged predator. He forces a phone into the guard's trembling hand, ordering him to call Petrov on speaker. He tells him to find out exactly where they stashed the Bennett kid. The condition is simple. Say one wrong word, and the knife goes to work. The guard nods, his face completely pale, all his tough guy illusions totally dissolved by the rain and the fear. Panic is an incredible mirror. Sometimes you never really know what you are capable of betraying until a blade is held to your neck, and you just want to live to see the morning. Look at the sheer cinematic weight of this frame. Leon looms over the broken man, his wet coat acting like a shadow against the sickly yellow street lamps. The bleeding captive punches the numbers into the glass, his thumbs shaking violently. It rings 4 terrible times. Petrov finally answers, his voice thick with suspicion. with Leon pressing the cold barrel of a gun hard into the base of his spine. The guard stammers out a lie about Varelli making an unexpected play. The silence stretching across the speakerphone is absolute agony. Finally, Petrov exhales and gives up the address. The Southside warehouse on Archer Street. Fake loyalty crumbles the second the heat gets turned up. Real devotion is built on years of trust, not the sudden, frantic fear of bleeding out in a gutter. The rain slicks the pavement as the line goes dead. In a motion of pure consequence, Leon's heavy boot shatters the phone with a sharp crack. He leans in, his voice a chilling whisper demanding the numbers. The trembling captive stammers out a guess of 7 guards. Leon presses harder, demanding the boy's condition. When the man chokes out that they beat the kid mercilessly over missing cash, blood physically drains from Aria's face. Suffocating dread swallows her. They broke her brother. Leon gives a stiff, frozen nod, signaling Simone to throw the informant into the van. It is a terrifying truth of the human condition. Profound emotional agony burns away our petty fears, leaving nothing but a raw, desperate drive to protect the fragile tethers that anchor our lives. Let us frame this tragic scene together, piece by broken piece. Leon never leaves survival to chance. He barks orders into his phone, demanding backup at the Southside Archer Street meatpacking plant and a clean escape route. As he pivots, his entire body freezes. Aria knows she made a fatal miscalculation the second she meets his hollow eyes. She stepped from the shadows, soaked in freezing rain, driven by the desperate hope of saving her sibling. Leon's icy control shatters into pure rage. He storms toward her through the downpour, screaming that she was supposed to stay hidden at the penthouse. It is a harsh truth we all face. Our absolute desperation to save someone we cherish often blinds us to the deadly danger we drag directly to the doorsteps of everyone else. The lens lingers on Leon, losing his mind in the street. His voice roars over the violent downpour, furious that staying hidden was the foundation of his plan. He grabs her arm with a trembling grip, proving she just crossed a fatal line. She tries to push back, arguing she can help, but he refuses to listen. He shoves her into the passenger seat, dropping a suffocating reality check in her lap. If she dies tonight, every violent sacrifice he just made means nothing. He slams the heavy door, trapping her inside, and storms off to argue with Simone in the biting cold. It is a bitter pill to swallow. Sometimes, our overwhelming need to play the hero only turns us into a deadly burden for the exact people who are bleeding just to keep us alive. The bitter argument in the rain reaches its breaking point. Simone throws herself into the van, with the bleeding hostage, her face a mask of disgust. Leon guns the engine, rigidly refusing to glance in Aria's direction. The tension inside that cramped cabin is thick enough to choke on, vibrating with the crushing weight of his unspoken fury. Aria wisely swallows her words, understanding a single breath would ignite the room. They drive into a rotting neighborhood where the streetlights have been dead for years, pulling up near the rusted bones of the meatpacking plant. This heavy scene serves as a dark reminder about human nature. True silence is never empty. It is violently packed with the agonizing truths we are simply too terrified to say out loud. Leon kills the engine 2 blocks from the rotting building. When he turns to look at her, so Shav carves sharp lines into his face. His expression is stripped of emotion, leaving behind eyes that are terrifyingly cold. He issues commands in a deadpan whisper. Lock the doors, do not move a muscle, and make no sound. Her throat is too tight for anything but a trembling nod. He presses a damp business card into her hands. If he is not back in exactly 1 hour, she must drive away and find a man named Marcus. When she asks what happens if he fails, he cuts her off with a heartbreakingly gentle touch to her cheek. It reveals a chilling truth. Deep, protective love often wears the harsh disguise of control, proving that genuine care can look exactly like absolute terror. Stay with me, because this is where the psychological weight crushes the soul. Before vanishing into the rain at Guillaume, Leon pleaded with her not to play the hero, forcing a promise that she would stay alive. Then he is gone, walking toward a fortified hideout. 10 agonizing minutes bleed into 20. You and I know the suffocating torture of sitting in total darkness while your brain conjures bloody outcomes. Suddenly, a deafening gunshot shatters the night, followed by absolute chaos. Every instinct screams at her to sprint into the crossfire, but the memory of his voice pins her to the leather seat. It teaches us a brutal lesson about restraint. The hardest part of keeping a promise is choosing to hold your ground when your heart screams to run into the fire. The camera stays tight on Arya's trembling hands. She failed him once, and she refuses to break another promise. Suddenly, automatic gunfire erupts, swallowed by a massive explosion that physically rocks the car. An orange fireball tears through the black sky. Arya realizes she has stopped breathing. The distant warehouse turns into a roaring inferno. Shadowy figures sprint through the smoke. Just as Patrick threatens to break her mind, the stolen burner phone in her coat begins to vibrate. She answers with shaking fingers, only to hear a terrifyingly smooth voice whisper, "Hello, Miss Bennett." He introduces himself as Alexei Volkov, suggesting they have a chat. Life has a cruel sense of humor. It throws devastating curveballs at the exact moment we believe we have nothing left to lose. The car feels like a shrinking coffin. Her voice cracks as she demands to know who is calling. The man introduces himself as Alexei Volkov, delivering a sickening twist. He has Ethan. Her blood turns to ice. Volkov claims the boy is safe for now, complaining that Leon made a massive mess. He proposes a chilling trade, her life for her brother. The relaxed calm in his tone is a terrifying red flag. She demands proof of life. A violent struggle echoes through the speaker, followed by Ethan's broken voice, begging her to stay away. Volkov dictates an address on Industrial Boulevard, granting her exactly 30 minutes. It is a terrifying reality to face. The universe frequently uses the exact people we cherish most as disposable pawns, forcing our hand when we are most vulnerable. The camera pushes in on her terrified eyes as Volkov dictates the deadly rules. If she is late, if she brings muscle, or if Leon finds out, Ethan dies. She forces a trembling yes past her pale lips, and the monster praises her before ending the call. Arya sits paralyzed in the freezing dark. Her instinct is to dial Leon, but another burst of gunfire echoes from the burning ruins. The jagged truth hits her in the chest. Leon is bleeding in a war she made worse. Waiting for him means Ethan dies tonight. With the clock ticking down her 30 minutes, she turns the ignition, noting the drive is 22 minutes away. We all learn this lonely lesson. Sometimes, you realize nobody is coming to save you, and you must dig deep to become the hero of your own twisted story. She throws the car into gear, driving frantically through the storm, ignoring every red light. Her universe has violently collapsed into a single goal, leaving Leon behind in the smoke. She turns onto Industrial Boulevard, arriving at a graveyard of rusted metal. Now, stick with me here, because walking willingly into an obvious trap goes against every survival instinct. She steps into the biting rain, and her phone buzzes with a text from Volkov. She is 2 minutes early, and the steel door is unlocked. Every alarm bell in her mind screams to run, but she remembers the heavy burdens Ethan carried for her. True gratitude is not just whispering a polite thank you. It is bravely showing up for the people who bled for you, even when the dark path leads straight into the fire. The camera slows as Arya grips the metal door and walks straight into the belly of the beast. Standing in the center of the miserable room is Alexei Volkov. Dressed in a tailored suit that mocks the filth around him, he wears the predatory smile of a shark. He greets her with sickening politeness, but Arya cuts through the theater, demanding her brother. Volkov gestures to the shadows, and the horrific sight shatters her soul. Ethan is chained to a damp concrete wall, his face battered beyond recognition. Through split, swollen lips, he chokes out that she never should have come. It brings us to a deeply painful realization. Loyalty is an undeniably beautiful trait, but blind, desperate devotion will often march you straight into the darkest nightmares imaginable. A guard snaps an order, driving his boot deep into Ethan's ribs. A sickening crack echoes. Arya lunges forward, her scream tearing through the silence. Volkov simply raises one finger. The violence instantly freezes. He circles her like a predator, savoring the absolute desperation in her tear-streaked face. Leon is a liability, he hisses, slaughtering his men just to play the hero. When Arya tearfully offers to pay the debt, Volkov laughs. Money means nothing to him, craves its absolute dominance. To a man like Leon, Arya is worth far more than $80,000. We learn a brutal truth in these shadows. Your true worth is never held in a bank vault. It is measured by the violent lengths someone will go to keep you breathing. Let us frame this shot together, you and I. Picture the absolute terror gripping Arya, her frame shaking under the crushing weight of the concrete room. She tries to sell a desperate lie, insisting a ruthless killer like Leon feels nothing for her. But the crime boss flashes a chilling smile. He watched Leon burn down entire criminal syndicates just to find her missing brother. Kings do not risk their thrones for nobodies, Volkov taunts. He makes a brief phone call, and heavy iron doors grind open. Two massive guards drag a broken, blood-soaked figure into the harsh fluorescent light. It is Leon, barely clinging to life. The cruelest lessons is hits like a physical blow. Living in denial will never shield you when the violent truth finally kicks down your front door. Focus the lens on Leon. His arm hangs at a sickening angle, brutal evidence of the physical hell he just survived. Yet, the exact second his battered eyes find Arya in the dim light, that agony evaporates. It is replaced by a terrifying mixture of pure rage and soul-crushing heartbreak. "You stupid girl," he gasps, utterly destroyed that she walked blindly into the trap. Volkov watches the exchange and laughs, deeply amused by the dark currency of human attachment. He casually lays out the ransom. Leon must surrender his territory, return the stolen capital, and hand over $200,000. When Leon asks what happens if he refuses, Volkov turns to ice. They all die. The truth we must swallow here is bitter. Love might be a beautiful human experience, but in a ruthless world, it becomes the sharpest weapon you can ever hand your enemies. The lighting shifts, casting nightmarish shadows as Volkov presses the freezing steel of a gun against Arya's temple. We only discover who a person truly is when the stakes turn deadly. Leon calculates the brutal arithmetic of sacrifice, fully willing to trade his life for hers. "Let them both go," Leon growls, his voice thick with blood. "You keep me instead." Arya shatters completely, begging him to stop, but Volkov coldly rejects the compromise. That is the precise moment Leon flips the script. He calmly states that if Arya does not walk, his associate will leak Volkov's darkest secrets. Every corrupt cop and hidden account will reach federal agents in exactly 30 minutes. The lesson carved into this exchange is timeless. Blind bravery without a concrete, calculated contingency plan is merely a tragedy waiting to unfold. Notice how the invisible tension in the room violently shifts. Volkov's arrogant smile vanishes. He attempts to call the bluff, but Leon simply recites a phone number, quietly daring the crime boss to verify his threat. Pull that trigger and watch your empire burn. The atmosphere turns suffocating, underscored only by the heavy rain hammering the metal roof. Volkov is visibly sweating now. He argues that releasing those files will destroy Leon's syndicate as well. But Leon is playing chess while his captor is stuck on checkers. He already relocated his finances and moved his crew long before stepping into this slaughterhouse. He stares down the barrel with absolute frost in his veins. Here is the undeniable truth. You must never provoke a war with a person who is perfectly willing to burn their own house down to the foundation. The camera lingers on Leon's unblinking stare. He promises that when the sirens wail, he will be a ghost while Volkov rots in a cage. Volkov stares for an agonizing eternity before lowering the weapon. "You are a madman," he mutters. Leon simply replies that he is highly motivated. He demands the guards cut Ethan loose, and the boy collapses into his sister's arms. Then the tone abruptly shifts. Leon shoots Arya, a look of absolute finality. He orders her to take her brother into the freezing rain and never look back. She sobs, refusing to abandon him. Leon softly reminds her of their old promise to run when the world catches fire. Seeing him surrender to his fate destroys her. The hard truth we pull from this wreckage is profound. Sometimes, the ultimate expression of love requires the brutal strength to walk away. Arya supports the dead weight of her brother, realizing his fragile survival rests entirely on her bruised shoulders. She backs toward the exit, unable to break eye contact with Leon, who is anchoring himself to take the fatal fall. "I will come back for you," she promises in the dark. Leon offers her one tragically soft smile as she vanishes into the freezing downpour. They barely make it a block before Ethan's legs give out, sending him crashing onto the wet concrete. The storm washes over them. Ethan begs his sister to leave him behind and save herself, but Arya fiercely rejects that ending. Ignoring her screaming muscles, she hoists him back to his feet, refusing to let his story conclude in a filthy gutter. The takeaway is brilliantly clear. True grit is born when your physical body fails, but your determined heart refuses to surrender. Stick with me, because the raw adrenaline takes over. Now, you and I know that terrifying flavor of blind panic, where your nervous system runs entirely on fumes. Arya drags Ethan's limp body toward her vehicle, slipping twice before she shoves him inside. She slides behind the wheel, fingers trembling so violently that the metal keys clatter against the ignition. She pulled out the rain-soaked card Leon gave her. The ink is dissolving, but she squints hard enough to punch the coordinates into the navigation. 12 agonizing minutes away. She slams the accelerator, tearing blindly through red lights and slick corners, consumed by the terror that Volkov's executioners are close. The psychological lesson here is crucial. When absolute chaos consumes your environment, finding a single shred of laser focus is the only way to survive the storm. The cinematic tension during this frantic drive is perfectly constructed. Ethan is slipping away, drawing shallow breaths barely audible over the roaring car heater. Arya is openly weeping, begging him to hold on, her voice cracking under the crushing psychological weight. They arrive at a decaying brick building hidden in the industrial zone, a bleak facade for an underground clinic. She pounds on the glass doors until her knuckles bruise. A massive, scarred man steps from the shadows. Arya screams that Leon's sent her to find Marcus, prompting the giant to unlock the doors. But the instant he asks where his employer is, Arya's hardened armor shatters completely. Volkov took him. She weeps. Here is a simple human truth. Even the strongest among us will finally break down the exact second we step into a safe harbor. Before her emotional collapse anchors her to the floor, Arya gestures frantically toward the vehicle. Her brother is fading into the dark void of the passenger seat. Notice how Marcus reacts here. He does not blink. For a man built like a concrete pillar, he moves with astonishing fluidity into the downpour. He pulls an encrypted phone, his voice dropping into a cold, professional register. He reports the failure to an unknown figure. The asset made it, but the architect got taken. You can taste the heavy dread settling into the room. Marcus effortlessly scoops Ethan into his massive arms, carrying him deep into the labyrinth. They cross into a sterile surgical suite, radiating the sharp scent of bleach, where a hardened woman stands ready. The takeaway is vital. When disaster strikes, true professionals refuse to panic. They simply get to work. The camera frames this underground physician as a true force of nature. She orders Marcus to place Ethan on the cold steel table, slicing through his soaked garments with heavy trauma shears. She operates with aggressive momentum, fighting to pull the young man back from the abyss. Meanwhile, Arya drifts through the room like a hollow specter, consumed by her own agonizing uselessness. Marcus soon guides her away from the bloody surgical theater, demanding a precise accounting of what went wrong. As the violent storm batters the roof, Arya tearfully confesses everything. The desolate warehouse, the manipulative call, and the reckless bargain she forged in a blind panic. Marcus absorbs this in dead silence, his scarred features darkening. When it clicks that Leon sacrificed his empire to purchase her freedom, the stoic giant softly curses. The tragedy is brutally clear. Every impulsive choice we make inevitably forces someone else to pay the heavy toll. The shadows in the room feel heavy. We watch Arya unravel, her voice cracking as she begs for a rescue mission. Across the table, Marcus doesn't blink at the glare of his monitors. He delivers the cold truth. Syndicates never orchestrate heroic rescues. Still, he suspects Leon surrendered on purpose, plotting a larger move. But Arya is paralyzed, terrified they might execute him. Marcus turns, piercing her defense, asking if she actually cares about him. She tries to build a wall, stammering they are strangers. But her mind flashes back to the warehouse, remembering how he looked at her like his final sunset. Here is the quiet truth we all must learn. You can spin lies for the world, but your heart always demands the truth. Her defensive walls finally crumble. She whispers into the sterile air, admitting she does care. Marcus receives this quiet confession with a slow nod, giving her one strict directive. If Leon survives this suicidal gamble, she needs to be breathing when the smoke clears. He spares her the cruelty of saying what happens if he dies. The next 6 hours drag like pure torture. Arya sits completely paralyzed in the waiting area while the surgeon pieces her brother back together. Nearby, Marcus silently fights an underworld war through his encrypted screens. Just before dawn breaks, Elena walks in. No judgment, no loud questions. She just hands Arya fresh clothes to replace her blood-stained shirt. You and I can take a deep lesson from this. The most powerful way to support someone is often just standing by them in the dark. Let's unpack this together. Arya peels off her ruined clothes, moving with the stiff grace of a broken machine, disconnected from her trembling hands. Elena steps in, insisting Leon is built different, having outsmarted the Reaper for 15 years. But Arya is chained to the cold reality. Yes, he knows survival, but he just burned his empire down for her. He let emotion override his cold logic, trading his crown to keep her alive. She cannot unsee the brief flash of panic in his eyes before his stoic mask slammed into place. Finally, near midnight, the exhausted surgeon pushes through the swinging doors. Her brother is shattered, but he will live. It brings us to a quiet truth. We never really know how strong we are until standing back up is the only option left. When Arya finally sees her brother breathing, the sheer weight of relief shatters her balance. She drops hard into a cheap hospital chair. The adrenaline drains out of her, pulling her into a heavy sleep. But the criminal world never stops. Suddenly, she is violently jolted awake by David Crane under the cruel glare of fluorescent lights. His expensive suit is torn, perfectly mirroring the total chaos she just unleashed. It is 4 a.m. He turns and locks the heavy wooden door, and his freezing silence screams louder than the storm raging outside the windows. The lesson standing in front of her is bitter, but real. Our deepest devotions always carry a terrible price. More often than not, saving the people we love means we have to inherit their heaviest debts. Back at the hidden safe house, David completely unravels. He tears into Arya with a blind, absolute fury. She desperately tries to defend her choices, her voice shaking as she insists she only wanted to protect her family. But David cuts through her excuses with surgical precision. He tells her she wandered blindly into a trap, burning down months of undercover work and forcing Leon into a fatal corner. He slams his hand against the worn table, roaring that she was supposed to stay hidden. He calls her a walking disaster, the fatal crack in their armor. But right beneath his explosive rage lies a tragic truth of human nature. Sometimes, the impulsive choices we make to save ourselves end up destroying the exact people who gave everything to keep us alive. Arya breaks the suffocating silence with a fragile whisper, asking if Leon is even still alive. Instantly, David's furious mask crumbles into pure exhaustion. He drops heavy into his chair, rubbing his tired eyes. They have heard nothing since Leon stole those syndicate documents. Volkov is a master of mental warfare, keeping Leon chained up just to test the feds. The sick irony of it all is that those files are basically useless against a boss of Volkov's size. It was a suicide mission, a sacrifice made, simply because Arya refused to wait. Guilt hits her chest like a physical blow. She stammers out a hollow apology. But look at the harsh reality staring her in the face. Words are just noise. An apology can never rebuild the lives we shatter with our own reckless choices. David studies her from across the room, his eyes turning to absolute ice. He offers her a bitter shot at redemption, but only if she has the stomach for it. Because Volkov knows exactly how much Leon cares about her, she is now a massive target. David slides a thick folder across the scratched wood, telling her they need to weaponize that vulnerability. Inside are grim surveillance shots and redacted letters. For 18 brutal months, David and Leon chased this ghost. They just need hard proof. But that evidence is locked deep inside a fortress of an office. Think about this profound truth of human conflict. When the fortress walls are too thick to smash from the outside, the only way to destroy the monster is to plant the explosive from the inside. Panic grips Arya's throat. She stammers, demanding to know how she fits into this dark game. David stares back. His face is a stone wall. He understands the twisted ego of a mob boss. Volkov is going to reach out just to flex his power, and when he does, David expects her to answer. She has to play the helpless victim, pretending she is only surrendering to save her brother. Then, she has to walk directly into the devil's lair, wearing a hidden wire. Arya is shaking so hard she can barely stand. He is asking her to smile at the exact monster who burned her family to ash. But I want you to look closely at her right now. This is where real change takes root. True courage does not mean the fear goes away. It means your hands are shaking, but you walk straight into the fire anyway. David leans in, explaining that Volkov is blinded by his massive ego. In his twisted reality, women are just background decorations. He will never see her coming, but Arya is sinking into dark memories. She can still feel the freezing steel of Volkov's gun pressed against her temple. She pictures Leon bleeding on a cold concrete floor, paying the price for her stubborn pride. Pulling in a ragged breath, she slowly nods. She agrees to the plan. David tells her to get some sleep, but rest is a quiet luxury only the innocent get to enjoy. She sits alone in the grey shadows, burying her face in her hands. She spent her whole life running from monsters, but the truth is, running just delays the clock. Sometimes, walking straight into the jaws of the beast is the only way to protect the ones you love. The suffocating tension finally snaps around 6 in the morning. Marcus steps through the door looking pale as a ghost, carrying a deadly message. It isn't from their inside contact, it is straight from Volkov. The boss is releasing his prisoner and demands a meeting at Pier 17. A cold dread washes over Arya. That is the exact pier where her nightmare started. Marcus insists it is a trap and commands her to stay out of sight, but watch how her body language shifts. Something deep inside her hardens into steel. She refuses, her voice sharp and steady. Leon sold his freedom to buy hers, and she is done hiding. She stares Marcus down, completely transformed. It reveals a beautiful lesson about growth. True power only begins the absolute second you stop asking for permission to write your own ending. Marcus mutters a curse about his dying career, yielding to the burning determination in her eyes. He sets one unbreakable rule. She stays locked inside the car. They ditch the safe house, tearing toward Pier 17 as a grey dawn bleeds through the rain. The massive warehouse looks like an open grave. Marcus kills the engine, and they sit in heavy silence. We have all felt that agonizing crawl of time where waiting physically hurts. At last, a black sedan rolls through the fog. 2 enforcers step out, dragging a beaten man onto the slick pavement. It is Leon. The car speeds off, leaving him bleeding in the mist. Marcus doesn't blink. He bolts out the door toward his friend. Here is the vital lesson. Real loyalty never hesitates for a single second when the storm finally hits. Arya instantly shatters the one rule she was given. She kicks the door open and sprints across the slick pavement. Up close, Leon looks like a walking corpse. His arm hangs at a wrong angle, his face painted in dark bruises. The second his eyes lock onto hers, a flash of frustration hits his face. "I told you to stay away." He groans, his voice like grinding stones. Shaking, she fires back that she was never good at following orders. As Marcus hauls him up, a suffocating wave of guilt paralyzes her. She tries to force out an apology, desperate to take the blame for his shattered body. But Leon just slowly shakes his head, too exhausted from hell to carry any anger. He just mutters for a doctor. The sobering truth remains. A desperate apology can never magically fix the things our reckless choices have broken. Let us step into the quiet aftermath together. The safe house is drenched in shadows and the metallic scent of copper. A doctor forces Leon's dislocated shoulder into place with a sickening crack. Leon swallows the painkillers without a flinch, his jaw locked in brutal endurance. Arya lingers in the doorway. Her hands tremble, caught between the urge to comfort him and the fear of causing more damage. Leon catches her eye through the gloom. He softly demands she walk away from this criminal underworld entirely. He knows she volunteered to play the sacrificial lamb, and it shatters him. Here is a tragic truth to remember. Real strength is having the grace to let the people you love escape your own chaotic, destructive mess. We are watching a heartbreaking psychological defense unfold in real time. Leon shoves an envelope of emergency cash across the stained table, practically begging Arya to vanish into the night. He is desperate to shield her from the syndicate, but she plants her feet. Stepping into his space, she strips away his armor. Leon tries to play the cold tactician, claiming his bloody sacrifice was just a strategic move. The lie turns to ash in his mouth. Arya saw the raw terror in his eyes when the guns were pointed at her. He turns his head away, his profile cast. In unforgiving light, unable to hide the tragedy, she is his ultimate vulnerability. Yet, the lesson here remains clear. The hardest choice in life is never running away, but choosing to stay and fight for what truly matters. Every tragedy turns on an irreversible pivot. Arya lowers herself to meet Leon's exhausted gaze. The victim mentality has burned out of her. She demands he teach her the dark art of survival, to dismantle Volkov's corrupt empire. Her voice is steady as she confesses she is tired of being rescued. The emotional gravity in the room presses down on them both. You can hear the last fragments of Leon's icy exterior shatter. He reaches out, his calloused fingers tracing a fading bruise on her cheek in a moment of sheer devastation. He warns her, this underworld will swallow her whole. She does not blink. Then make me ready, she whispers. The ultimate lesson is brutal but true. When you realize no one is coming to save you, you must forge yourself into your own protector. Leon searches Arya's eyes for a shadow of hesitation. The silence is deafening. Finding none, the enforcer nods, his face setting like stone. The terms he lays down are absolute. She must follow his commands to the letter, ready to flee without a backward glance if he gives the signal. His voice drops into a chilling oath. If Volkov discovers her betrayal, Leon swears he will burn the entire criminal underworld to ash. The brutal initiation begins immediately. David schools her in the delicate art of taping a wire against her ribs, teaching her the silent vocabulary of human behavior. It reveals a profound truth about survival. True strength is rarely about the force of a punch. It is found in total discipline, mastering the quiet, psychological warfare that keeps you breathing. Marcus pushes her through punishing defensive drills, hardening her instincts for the moment the deception shatters. From the dark periphery, Leon watches, calibrating her every flinch. Across town, her brother Ethan is physically healing, but the air in his room remains suffocating. Arya visits daily, yet an unspeakable chasm of guilt sits heavy between them. It is a bitter lesson to digest. Guilt has the terrifying power to corrode our deepest bonds faster than any physical trauma. By the 8th day, the agonizing wait ends. Arya is standing in the penthouse when her screen illuminates with an untraceable number. She meets Leon's intense gaze. He gives a slow, deliberate nod. The snare is set, and the tension in the room grows absolutely suffocating. Let us pause and unpack this sequence together. When Arya accepts the call, Volkov's voice slithers through the speaker, making the hair on your arms stand up. He plays the courteous villain flawlessly, weaving a web of artificial regret. He apologizes for the violence, inviting her to dine at Monarch, the glittering temple of corrupt wealth where she once worked. She fires back, demanding a reason to entertain him. Volkov casually drops his masterstroke. He promises to wipe her brother's massive debt entirely clean. He knows exactly which psychological levers to pull. We must recognize a harsh reality here. Fear is the heaviest chain we drag through life, and manipulative predators will always weaponize it to keep you tethered to their design. Volkov smoothly insists they need to discuss Mr. Varelli. Across the dim space, Leon makes a quiet circular motion with his finger, signaling Arya to keep the kingpin talking. Feigning a tremor in her voice, she asks about Leon. Volkov immediately pours on the artificial sympathy. He paints Leon as a rabid dog, offering his own clean hands to pull her away from his grasp. The audacity is staggering. Every survival instinct screams at Arya to hang up, but her eyes drift to the fresh wounds on Leon's jaw. Those are scars he took to keep her breathing. Swallowing her terror, she agrees to meet at 8 o'clock tomorrow. The light drops into dead air. It teaches us a grim truth. Sometimes you must pull up a chair at the devil's table to shield the ones you love. The moment the call ends, the general takes over. Leon contacts David, commanding him to accelerate their timeline for tomorrow. Beside him, Arya is trembling so violently she has to anchor her hands against her thighs, just to feel the earth. Seeing this, Leon's hardened exterior fractures. The tragic guardian surfaces, quietly urging her to walk away from the trap. But Arya is entirely committed. Meeting his gaze, she declares she is finished bowing to fear, refusing to let him absorb the damage alone. Leon stares at her, finally seeing he cannot cage her spirit. We must remember this truth. True courage is not the absence of terror, but the realization that something else matters infinitely more. Yielding, Leon vows to be waiting in the shadows of the restaurant. Leon swears to remain invisible, but warns that if the atmosphere shifts, they will reduce the building to cinders. The following 24 hours blur into a fever dream of preparation. David embeds a listening device against her ribs. Marcus orchestrates her escape patterns until muscle memory takes the wheel. Then, Leon delivers a masterclass in psychological warfare. He dissects Volkov's blind spots, explaining how the kingpin's arrogance demands she play the terrified prey. He instructs her to feed that vanity, to paint Leon as a tyrant. This reveals a vital strategy for navigating life. A toxic narcissist is always undone by their own inflated ego. You simply allow them to believe they hold the crown, right up until the floor gives way beneath them. Leon demands she weaponize her own dread, assuring her that whatever poison she spills about him will not break his loyalty. The psychological pressure mounts with every tick of the clock. By 8 in the evening, Arya feels decades older than her reflection suggests. She slips into the severe gown Leon procured, the transmitter breathing against her skin. Staring into the glass, she sees a hard-hunt operative where a frightened girl used to be. Volkov dispatches an absurdly opulent vehicle, and the journey is a silent battle against rising panic. Soon, the glowing fortress of Monarch towers above her, a temple of extreme indulgence. It serves as a stark reminder of a universal truth. The finest silk suits and gleaming crystal can never conceal the rot of the predators hiding inside. Alexei Volkov commands a secluded booth in the shadows of the restaurant. Draped in impeccable tailoring, he offers a disarming smile, acting as though are old friends rather than adversaries. As he offers hollow praise, Arya returns a brittle smile, her eyes discreetly tracking the exits. She cannot see Leon, but the phantom weight of his protection anchors her. Volkov orders an expensive vintage, maintaining the illusion of a casual evening. Arya navigates the minefield beautifully, laughing at his hollow charm while the hidden wire drinks in every syllable. As the plates are cleared, the facade drops, and Volkov stares at her with the cold, dead eyes of a shark. The deepest lesson we can draw here is chilling. The ultimate predators do not bare their teeth. They pour your wine. Volkov shifts the power dynamic, adopting a tone of paternal concern. He paints Leon as a ruthless user who discards people the moment their value expires. He projects this nauseating empathy, pretending her survival is his only priority. Playing her part, Arya softly asks for his solution. He dangles an intoxicating fantasy. He will instantly vaporize Ethan's debt and fund their escape from the underworld. But in the architecture of organized crime, every gift is a trap. The toll is simple. He just needs Arya to track Leon's movements. Just a quiet betrayal, he whispers. This dynamic teaches a terrifying truth. Whenever a monster offers you a painless exit from your suffering, the unwritten currency they demand is almost always your soul. You and I must recognize the gravity of this exact moment. Beneath the thin silk dress, Arya trembles, her heartbeat a frantic drum against her ribs. Sickening flashes of Leon with a shattered jaw and Marcus bleeding on the cold concrete flood her vision. Summoning a desperate resolve, she locks eyes with the crime lord and asks what happens if she refuses. Volkov does not blink. The room goes cold as he calmly promises to execute her brother. But the tragic irony is the hidden wire pressing into her skin, capturing every damning syllable. It serves as a profound lesson in human survival. Sometimes destroying a monster requires you to sit at their table and play their twisted game. She hesitates just long enough, and Volkov smirks, warning her not to linger on the choice. Volkov concludes the dark evening with chilling manners, noting softly that his generosity has a very short shelf life. The instant Arya clears those heavy glass doors, her adrenaline violently plummets. She collapses into the shadows of the waiting vehicle, pulling in a desperate, ragged breath. In the gloom, her screen illuminates her pale face with a message from Leon. "Well done, come home." Those words anchor her mind to reality. It highlights an enduring truth about the human spirit. Surviving profound trauma together weaves a bond of loyalty that no external force can sever. Back at the penthouse, the air crackles with energy. David replays the audio, vibrating with triumph. Drained to her marrow, Arya looks at her makeshift family and asks if this is the final dagger. David tempers the celebration, admitting it is not the final blow, but the fracture that brings the house down. From the dim hallway, Leon emerges like a bruised phantom. Ignoring the agony of his battered ribs, he pulls Arya against his chest, declaring her espionage days are over. But Arya refuses to retreat. The fire in her eyes is lit. Leon tries to assert control, but he is staring at a changed woman. Here is a vital lesson about personal growth. A protective bubble is a blessing for the wounded, but eventually it solidifies into a prison. Arya spent her life cowering behind violent men. Tonight, she tasted her own agency. Staring into her protector's eyes, she reveals a spine of absolute iron, declaring she will burn this empire down herself. For 3 agonizing weeks, Arya sits across from the cruel architect of her suffering 4 separate times. It is a psychological chessboard, and she plays the most dangerous piece. In the shadows, David orchestrates the surveillance, while Marcus plots escape routes. Leon remains the silent phantom, a guardian watching the predator circle. Arya performs perfectly, wearing the mask of a broken victim. Volkov consumes the illusion entirely. His ego becomes his undoing as he carelessly unravels the names of corrupted officials. The life lesson here is simple. Arrogance is always the loudest voice in the room. especially when it believes it is untouchable. Slowly, the digital guillotine is assembled in the dark. The snare is finally set, waiting for his fatal misstep. You and I know fate exacts a heavy toll for vengeance. The narrative shifts abruptly when Volkov reaches out, wielding a terrifying new weapon, doubt. He claims to possess proof that the true monster is the man living under her roof. His tone has mutated from arrogant to ravenous. He summons her to his inner sanctum tonight, demanding she leave Leon in the dark. As the line goes dead, a cold sweat breaks across Arya's skin. His private office is the locked archive of his sins. To cross that threshold is to walk willingly into the predator's open maw. But life teaches us a crucial truth. Most profound victories require us to turn the handle on the doors we fear the most. She descends the stairs to find Leon, unaware of the abyss she is about to leap into. Leon studies her face. The ghostly pallor of her skin sends a shockwave of dread through his posture. He demands the truth, and Arya delivers the chilling reality of Volkov's summons. His instincts ignite, diagnosing the invitation as a fatal trap. Yet Arya remains unyielding, identifying this as the singular flaw in the Syndicate's armor. Leon shatters the quiet, his scarred fist colliding violently with the heavy oak desk. He paces the room like a cornered animal, warning her that his protection cannot reach into that stronghold. Arya meets his fury with an unsettling calm. Life offers a harsh reminder here. Absolute safety is merely a comforting fiction we tell ourselves. Leon freezes, completely paralyzed by the dark realization that she's entirely willing to walk directly into the fire. The armor of the enforcer begins to fracture. Leon trembles, recounting the cruelty of a man who ends lives over mere whispers. The terror of losing her is dismantling him, but Arya anchors herself, promising to carry his voice as her shield. Leon gazes at her, overwhelmed by her metamorphosis into a strategist. He whispers that she has transformed. She holds his tortured gaze, replying that he was the hammer that forged her. The admission hollows him out, revealing his guilt over pulling her into this shadowy existence. The terrifying lesson about love is that it dismantles our former selves to forge something far more resilient. She reminds him he taught her to wield her own power. Gripping the window frame, Leon chokes out a confession. If she falls, he will never forgive himself. Arya offers a vow of survival, but Leon's dread shatters the comfort. Touching his rigid shoulder, she asks for the trust she once placed in him. The hardened operative turns, exposing a startling, raw vulnerability. He murmurs that leveraging their shared history is a cruel tactic. The profound life lesson here is that the most agonizing conflicts do not unfold on battlefields, but between two battered souls desperately trying to shield one another. Surrendering, Leon gives a defeated nod. He mandates rigorous control parameters, tactical oversight, memorized emergency exits, and absolute adherence to the script. The following hours blur into a frantic crucible of preparation, as David relentlessly refines her deception until her lies sound like the absolute truth. Let's look closely at this scene. Marcus immerses her in the grim mathematics of survival. He calculates acoustics for the microphone, identifies one spot, and rehearses the paralysis required if searched. In the periphery, Leon haunts the room like a spectre, mourning a loss that has not yet occurred. As the clock strikes 8:30, Arya confronts her reflection. The wire rests against her skin like ice. Her eyes reflect a brutal war between terror and absolute resolve. Leon's shadow eclipses the doorway, his voice thick as he announces the final 30 minutes. He steps inside, the click of the lock sealing them in suffocating proximity. we confront this difficult truth in life. Humanity tends to build its most impenetrable fortresses exactly when it craves connection the most. Leon's voice drops to a dark register. His desperate gaze locks onto hers, delivering a blood oath that any threat from Volkov will end the operation. The evidence has lost its value. Her survival is the only currency that matters. Arya tries to diffuse the heavy atmosphere with a fragile joke about his strategy. Instead, Leon bridges the gap. His calloused hands frame her face as he fiercely declares her worth over any master plan. The emotional dam begins to crack. She leans into his warmth, whispering that survival means they must finally define the unsaid bond between them. Leon answers by pulling her into a desperate, grounding kiss. The enduring life lesson is simple. The most profoundly honest dialogues are exchanged without the clumsy interference of spoken language. Arya mirrors his intensity, funneling her dread into the embrace. Pulling away, Leon presses his forehead against hers, begging for her safe return. She seals the promise with a whisper. A black sedan idles by the curb, and she enters the solitary confinement of the back seat. Those quiet journeys are universally haunting, watching city lights bleed through tinted glass. The concealed earpiece weighs heavily against her skin. Suddenly, Leon's voice bleeds through the static, reminding her she is guarded. Unable to speak, she lets his steady tone quiet the tremor in her hands. The vehicle halts beneath a towering glass monolith. Here is an essential life lesson. Authentic bravery is never the absence of terror, but the conscious decision to step directly into the dark anyway. Stick with me. This is where it breaks. The ascent to the 20th floor feels like a march to the executioner's block. Her pulse drums frantically. The doors part to reveal an antechamber of sterile chrome. Beyond, Volkov commands the panoramic view of his office, an apex predator surveying his domain. He pivots, offering a polite smile. Arya refuses the pleasantries, demanding the promised revelation. Cold amusement dances in Volkov's eyes as he gestures to a chair. Arya calculates her geometry, positioning near the glass for an exit while optimizing the microphone. Volkov ceremoniously pushes a dense dossier across the desk. The vital life lesson here? True devastation rarely breaches your walls by force. Instead, it graciously invites you inside and quietly turns the lock behind you. Step into this room with me, where a perfect manipulation unfolds. Volkov locks onto Arya with venomous pity, delivering the fatal shot. Leon has been a federal informant for 6 months. He scatters grainy surveillance photographs across the desk, showing Leon exchanging files in the shadows. Volkov weaves a terrifying narrative: her abduction, the dramatic rescue, their quiet moments, all meticulously choreographed. She was merely bait. You can almost hear the foundation of Arya's reality cracking. She studies the blurry evidence, trembling as she searches for a lie. Life teaches an unforgiving lesson here. Trust takes years of quiet devotion to build, but only a fraction of a second to pulverize. Once that mirror fractures, the reflection of reality is forever distorted. Arya's eyes trace the familiar loops of Leon's signature, and a cold gravity anchors her spirit. The documents look agonizingly real. Her voice trembles as she questions the crime lord's motive. Volkov leans across the desk, insisting Leon is molding her into a sacrificial blade. Suddenly, Leon's frantic voice erupts through her hidden earpiece. He screams that the ledgers are fabricated, begging her to reject the poison. But suspicion is a ruthless contagion. She replays the perfection of his rescue, wondering if she was merely a pawn. The critical life lesson here is profound. Never allow the poetry of a savior's words to eclipse the brutal arithmetic of the truth. Her face hardens into solid steel as she glares at Volkov, demanding absolute, undeniable proof. She demands an undeniable testament of guilt, refusing to be broken by mere paper. Volkov absorbs her defiance with a chilling smile. He glides toward a wall and presses a concealed mechanism. The mahogany retreats, revealing a heavy steel vault. Arya's internal alarms violently activate. This is the exact fortress David identified as the Syndicate's true heart. Volkov manipulates the dial, extracting a simple silver flash drive. He presents it as the ultimate gospel of betrayal. Here is a reality check for you and me. The most catastrophic forms of destruction are often concealed within the smallest, quietest vessels. Her fingers close around the cold metal. Volkov delivers the final blow, whispering that it holds the visual record of the night her brother vanished. The lighting shifts, casting shadows across Volkov's face. His gaze drops to an absolute zero as he delivers a lethal twist. He reveals Leon knew exactly where Ethan was, intentionally letting the Syndicate brutalize the boy for 2 solid days. Why? Because Leon needed Arya completely shattered so she would blindly cling to. For her, the revelation hits her like a physical blow. In her earpiece, Leon is frantically screaming for her to evacuate, but she cannot move a muscle. She stares at the silver drive, suffocating under the realization that her gleaming knight is the architect of her suffering. It is a profound truth we all eventually face. Sometimes we fiercely lock the front door, entirely unaware that the monster is already sitting comfortably at our own table. Arya snaps back to reality, scrambling to her feet. Volkov plays the perfect gentleman, smoothly guiding her to the exit. He drops one final psychological seed, whispering that the devil you know is often worse than the stranger in the dark. She stumbles outside, her legs barely holding her up. Downstairs, she spots Leon pacing by a black sedan. The panic on his face is palpable as he demands to know what happened. Arya does not blink. She holds up the silver flash drive like a weapon, declaring that Volkov gave her the ultimate proof. Proof that Leon let her brother suffer just to forge her into a loyal asset. The lesson here is brutal but deeply necessary. The truth never cares about our fragile feelings, and it will always tear its way out of the dark. Watch how quickly the mask slips. The panic on Leon's face vanishes, replaced by a cold wall of emotional stone. He quietly asks if she actually believes a Mafia boss. This manipulation snaps something deep inside her. She screams that she has no idea who to trust anymore. Terrified, she simply traded one monster for another. Leon holds out his hand for the drive, but she steps back, demanding to know if he knew Ethan's location before the raid. The pause that follows is suffocating. You and I know exactly what a guilty silence sounds like, do we not? Finally, his voice goes dead. He admits he knew 6 hours before they moved in. Listen closely to this reality. When someone begins treating human lives like disposable pieces on a chessboard, it is time to flip the board. The camera circles them, capturing the death of their bond. Instead of showing remorse, Leon pivots onto the offensive. He aggressively justifies his actions, claiming he did what was necessary for survival. Arya screams that he intentionally let them break her brother. Leon's eyes turn to pure ice. He fires back that he was letting Ethan face the consequences of his choices. He claims he needed those 6 hours to plan a rescue that would not end in a bloodbath. Arya lets out a hollow laugh, noting the bitter irony that the ruthless crime lord now seems like the honest man. Leon shoves his hand out, challenging her to watch the footage together. Life teaches us this painful lesson. A cleverly crafted lie might sprint fast, but the undeniable truth will always run a long marathon. Every primal instinct in her brain screams for her to run. But the tragic reality is you can never outrun your demons. Taking a shaky breath, she surrenders the drive to Leon. They return to the penthouse in a suffocating silence. David boots up a laptop, checking the device for traps before Leon plugs it in. Dozens of files explode onto the screen. Hidden wire, transfers, modest private emails, a massive paper trail. David scans the mess, admitting the bank records are legitimate. Leon is actually working as an informant for the federal agents. Arya feels the room spin as the horrific reality sets in. Volkov was telling the absolute truth. Pay close attention to this lesson. Sometimes your most ruthless enemy is the only person willing to hand you an honest mirror. David points urgently at the monitor, his face pale. This federal deal began 8 months ago, long before Leon knew Arya existed. David tries to reframe the narrative, insisting this was about dismantling Volkov's empire, not manipulating her. But Arya whispers the painful truth. He still used her as a disposable pawn. Looking drained, Leon finally drops the facade and confesses. The brutal honesty hangs in the room like toxic smoke. How do you process the trauma of learning the man who pulled you from the fire is the one who struck the match? It is a devastating lesson. Never put another human being on a pedestal, because they will inevitably fall. Arya quietly asks them to play the video. The grainy security feed reveals Ethan, battered and bleeding, strapped to a cold chair. Let us step into that suffocating room alongside Arya, you and I. We watch the cold monitor as the enforcers systematically break her brother down. With every brutal strike, Arya physically recoils. Then a familiar shadow enters the frame. It is Leon. Arya stops breathing entirely. She watches Leon approach Ethan, coldly calculating his injuries with terrifying precision. Ethan looks up, desperately begging for salvation. But Leon simply shakes his head and abandons him in the dark. Arya's voice cracks, demanding to know what she is seeing. Leon remains chillingly stoic. He claims he had to confirm Ethan would survive the night while he assembled a strike team. This reveals a terrifying paradox. Sometimes doing the absolute right thing looks exactly like an unforgivable betrayal. Notice how Leon's voice never wavers. He stares right through her, explaining that extracting Ethan right then would have triggered a bloodbath. He checked his pulse, verified he was not bleeding out, and coldly walked away to assemble a tactical unit. Arya realizes with horror that Leon did not offer her brother a single whisper of comfort before leaving him. Leon's justification is purely clinical. He states that hope makes desperate people do reckless things. He made the monstrous, logical choice so they could survive. Arya is paralyzed, studying his unreadable expression as her reality collapses. She finally sees the dynamic clearly. It is a chilling realization when you discover the ruthless hands pulling your strings are the exact same forces keeping you alive. But let us look at the cold facts together. Arya is breathing. Her brother is alive. Fighting through the emotional whiplash, she orders them to play the rest of the drive. David clicks through folders of laundered money. One specific file jumps out, ominously labeled insurance. The footage reveals Volkov in his lavish office, sharing a drink with an associate. They are laughing warmly. Then, without letting his smile slip for a second, Volkov draws a pistol and puts 3 rounds into the man's chest. He casually picks up his phone to order a cleanup crew with the emotional detachment of ordering takeout. Pay close attention to this reality. The purest, most insidious evil in our world is rarely loud or angry. It is just a quiet, unbothered man making a routine phone call. Marcus stands paralyzed, shadows hiding his expression. Beside him, Leon absorbs the suffocating weight of the moment. Arya willingly stepped into the beast's lair, returning with the blackmail that could bury Volkov forever. But why would a predator simply surrender his teeth? Arya recalls Volkov's mocking smile and the tragedy of Luka, the loyal soldier who bled for the man who slaughtered his parents. Volkov masterfully rots families from within. Her voice is steady as she tells Leon she was told to choose her devil. Leon falls into a dangerous quiet, asking which monster she will serve. She holds his gaze, letting a crushing silence drown the room. It is a bitter truth of this world. Putting your faith in ruthless people is a jagged blade that always cuts the hand that holds it. Stick with me here, and let us trace her evolution together. Barely 3 weeks ago, this woman was a fading ghost, burying her bruises in the dark. Now, the cold penthouse light catches her face as she creeps the drive that will shatter an empire. She looks Leon dead in the eye, declaring she chooses herself. For a second, we see a fracture in Leon's icy armor, a flash of profound respect. When he asks what her choice means, she drops a hidden wire onto the polished glass. She is done playing the victim in his chess match. She will testify, burn the syndicate down, and walk away clean. Leon attempts to argue, but she silences him with a harsh stare. True strength is not about bleeding in every single fight. It is the quiet wisdom of knowing exactly when to walk away. She tells Leon he was right about her potential, but she is no longer his asset. She belongs entirely to herself. The silence that follows is heavy enough to crack concrete. David clears his throat, breaking the tension to announce they have the evidence to raid Volkov tonight. He nervously glances at the boss. Leon stares intensely at Arya and softly agrees. David shuts his laptop, stating Arya needs federal protection, but Leon steps forward, his shadow engulfing the room. His voice drops to a terrifying rumble, declaring she is staying right here with him. David protests, but Leon's lethal glare ends the debate instantly. It is a haunting paradox we often face in this life. Sometimes, the very people who wound us the deepest are the exact ones who will fiercely protect us from the shadows. Let us look at this piece by piece, shall we? Leon commands David to focus entirely on making the charges stick. David tries to argue, but the crushing gravity radiating from the mob boss forces him to retreat. The frame empties, leaving Arya and Leon isolated against an indifferent city skyline. The room grows agonizingly quiet. Leon drops his voice to a raw whisper, reminding her she could have been killed. When he asks why she took such a risk, she stares into the dark and delivers a defining truth. She spent her entire life running from her father, from Volkov, and even from him. She simply needed to taste real bravery. Hearing this, Leon's icy armor finally shatters. Here is a simple life lesson to carry with you. True courage and sheer foolishness almost always wear the exact same mask. Arya admits that in their brutal world, bravery and foolishness share the same bloodline. A rare smile breaks across Leon's hardened face. The camera lingers as he pours 2 glasses of scotch, the ice clinking sharply against the silence. He raises his glass to calculated risks, but she stops him, toasting instead to simply surviving them. It is a brilliant shift in power. As deep exhaustion sets in, she asks what happens next. Leon explains the agents will raid Volkov by dawn. She will testify, the tyrant will fall, and then she must decide whether to vanish or stay by his side. The lesson here is profoundly true. The hardest part of any crisis is not surviving the violent storm, but deciding exactly where to rebuild your life once the dust finally settles. Leon drops his voice to a hypnotic register, explaining his syndicate demands brilliant minds he can trust. He isn't offering a cage, he is offering a permanent seat at the table, not as a pawn, but as an absolute equal. She asks what kind of seat, and he sets his glass down, stating he will adapt his empire to her strengths. You and I have probably both made this mistake, staring into someone's face, searching for a hidden trap. Arya looks into his eyes expecting a trick, but finds only raw, unfiltered honesty. She promises to think about it, and he accepts her boundary. True peace rarely arrives with grand parades. It quietly begins the very moment you finally let down your guard and stop bracing for the next heavy punch. Her protective instincts spike, and Arya whispers she needs to check on Ethan. Leon steps closer, assuring her the boy is fast asleep. He reminds her to rest, knowing tomorrow will be an absolute war zone when the syndicate finally fractures. She forces a lie about not being tired, but Leon reads right through the tough facade. Slowly, this ruthless mob boss raises a hand, brushing his thumb against her pale cheek. He confesses, his voice tight, that she completely terrified him tonight. She leans into the touch, silently glad she made him feel real fear. He is a man who can survive anything, but watching her walk into the fire broke him. The profound truth is this: love simply gives someone else the terrifying power to completely destroy you, and he just handed her the weapon. Leaning in close, Leon begs her to stay. Finally, she closes the space between them. The framing shifts. This is not a rushed kiss born of panic. It is slow, deeply deliberate, and packed with a desperate promise. He holds her tight, treating her like something fragile. When they pull apart, she rests her head against his chest, grounded by his heartbeat. She whispers she is still furious he used her as a pawn. Leon owns the accusation, understanding her anger. She tells him to ask for forgiveness only when Volkov is locked in a cage. He accepts the terms without hesitation. By 6 in the morning, distant police sirens shatter the silence. The sun always rises, but we first have to survive the bitter cold of a long midnight to ever truly appreciate the morning light. The visual payoff here is stunning. On screen, the untouchable kingpin Volkov is dragged out in heavy iron chains. The man who used to own the city looks incredibly small, snarling uselessly at the flashing cameras. Arya watches the broadcast, muttering that the nightmare was worth it. Leon stands beside her, sporting a fresh arm sling. He refuses to explain. He reveals David found the hidden ledgers needed to crush the syndicate. The next 3 months blur into a fever dream. Arya takes the witness stand, systematically exposing every dark secret. The defense lawyers try to rip her apart like starving wolves, but her posture never falters. A clean conscience is your ultimate armor. When you anchor yourself to the solid truth, absolutely nobody can force you to abandon your ground. It takes the jury 4 hours to drop the final hammer, guilty on every charge. Volkov gets life in a concrete box with 0 chance of parole. Yet, as Arya watches her abuser get dragged away, there is no triumphant joy on her face. Instead, we see a profound, hauntingly hollow quiet. The monster is simply gone. Meanwhile, Leon secretly handles Marcus off-screen, and she never asks for the violent details. But one afternoon, Marcus calls. His voice shakes with raw terror, frantically promising he will never come near her again before the line dies. Real justice rarely mimics a loud movie climax. Mostly, it just looks like the quiet, eerie aftermath of a brutal storm, leaving you standing in the silent wreckage, forced to slowly build a new life from the ground up. Stick with me here, and let us look at where these characters finally end up. Ethan spends 2 grueling months in rehab, quietly funded by Leon. When he emerges, that vacant look in his eyes has vanished. He tearfully apologizes for dragging his sister down, calling himself weak. But Arya grips his hand, reminding him they were both just drowning, and they finally swam to the surface. Now, Ethan lives in a quiet apartment owned by the syndicate and teaches local classes. It isn't glamorous, but it is safe, and he calls her every single Sunday. Piece by piece, they are learning to be a family again. Healing is a grueling marathon. Your deepest scars might never fully vanish, but if you give them enough time, they eventually stop aching every single time you touch them. When the dust finally settles, Arya makes her definitive choice. She completely stops running. Instead, she steps directly into the underworld by Leon's side, taking a firm grip on his empire. She develops a lethal instinct, reading the motives of dangerous men like an open book. Leon refuses to coddle her. He hands her real authority and forces her to stand up when she stumbles. True growth only happens when we are allowed to bleed for our own mistakes. Their dynamic is an absolute thunderstorm. They clash relentlessly over strategy, but that friction forges an unbreakable bond. Leon finally stops trying to control her fate, and she stops waiting for a savior. In the center of that chaotic violence, they discover a profound connection neither ever dared to believe was real. 6 months bleed away. The lens finds Arya tearing through Leon's mahogany study, hunting a fatal loophole in a syndicate contract. From the heavy shadows, Leon watches. The dim light catches his proud smile. A king, admiring his equal. He shatters the silence, noting how deeply she craves this chaos. She brushes it off as a simple puzzle, but Leon drops a heavy anchor. He tells her she is falling in love with the power. You and I know this bitter truth. We run from power until we realize it is the only armor that keeps us breathing. She whispers, asking if that makes her a monster. Stepping close, he replies that it just makes her honest. That trembling girl hiding in a diner is completely gone, replaced by someone ready to march into hell and pull the trigger. The camera holds on Leon as he recalls how she used to run from every shadow. She was drowning back then, but right now she is fiercely alive. Arya lets the heavy papers scatter, insisting he pulled her from the dark. Lee heals at that thought instantly. He merely unlocked a door. She found the brutal strength to walk through it. His thumb gently traces her jaw. Here is a quiet lesson we all need to learn. You can be completely loved precisely because of the jaggeds you carry. Her iron walls finally collapse as she leans into his calloused palm. She softly asks what comes next. Leon pulled her flush against his chest, swearing they will build an empire side by side. She warns him it sounds complicated. He whispers that the best things always are, just before his mouth finds hers. Time stretches out as the lens lingers on their kiss. The frantic panic of their past is gone, replaced by the heavy weight of true choice. Pulling away slowly, Leon keeps his forehead resting against hers. His voice is a rough rasp when he asks her to stay. Arya lets out a soft laugh, pointing out she is already here, but his dark eyes do not waver. He wants her to claim this penthouse as a permanent home, not just a concrete bunker. When she asks why, the untouchable king strips away his armor and admits he loves her. Remember this simple truth. Sometimes the very storm that wrecks your careful plans is the only thing that actually saves you. Staring into his eyes, Arya knows he is right. She loves this beautifully broken man who pushed her to stop hiding and finally claim her own crown. This is far from the fragile fairy tales Arya once clung to. Loving a man with a dark past guarantees nothing but chaos. Their bond was forged in the white-hot heat of survival, built on razor blades and painful honesty. Yet, looking into his exhausted eyes, she surrenders and whispers yes. A genuine smile breaks across Leon's face. a clean light piercing his usual gloom. He pulls her tight, and she feels the immense weight of the empire waiting for them. Here is a harsh but necessary lesson in life. True power is never politely handed over to you. You have to step up and take it. The girl hiding bruises in a dirty diner has vanished forever. Now, she is a fierce leader who understands that real courage is not being unafraid, but stepping forward even when your very bones are shaking. She had finally absorbed the most brutal lesson. The demons trying to rip you apart and the angels stitching you back together are both just teaching you how to forge your own armor. Arya became her own savior. 2 years evaporate like smoke. The lens catches her before a massive mirror, smoothing the lapels of a sharp, tailored suit. She took Leon's cold fortress and breathed life into it, filling the space with warmth and memories. When Elena steps in to announce that Mr. Varley is waiting below, Arya does not even blink. She holds the gaze of her own fierce reflection and tells Elena to make him wait 5 more minutes. The lesson here is simple. Only when we finally plant our feet and stop running do we earn the absolute right to dictate the terms of our own existence. Elena adds that Leon thinks she looks stunning and should stop fussing. A soft smile breaks across Arya's face. He always knows her mind. She takes one final look in the glass. The terrified stray from the slums is erased. In her place stands a queen of quiet, lethal poise, a woman who now controls 3 major syndicates and commands 40 soldiers. Down in the foyer, Leon waits by the heavy doors, dangerously sharp in a dark suit. As she descends, his eyes take her in with absolute reverence. He asks if she is ready, his voice a low rumble. She nods. They have an empire to govern and a peaceful night ahead. We spend our lives terrified of the dark, but the truth is simple. Sometimes, the deepest shadows are exactly the place we are meant to finally plant our roots and bloom. Stepping from the penthouse, a sudden chill hits Arya, dragging her back to their first night. She remembers the terror of that pitch-black evening when, out of options, she dialed Leon's number. You and I have probably been in that exact spot, standing at the cliff edge of ruin, staring into the abyss. She silently weighs every jagged choice she made to get here. The mistakes, the frantic escapes, the blind leaps of faith. She finally understands a crucial lesson. Being broken does not make you weak, and reaching out for someone in the dark does not mean you are helpless. The hands that catch your fall are the ones that help you build your kingdom. Reaching the elevator, Leon slides his fingers through hers, his steady grip grounding her completely. The quiet breaks as Leon asks what is on her mind, his voice a low rumble. Arya smiles softly, murmuring that she was just thinking about the hell they walked through to arrive here. Looking down, shadows catching his face, he reminds her the road ahead remains long. She squeezes his hand, whispering she is ready for every single step. The steel doors slide open and they step inside. As the metal seals them in, plunging them into the glowing city, they ride toward a future ripped straight from the mud. This is a life paid for in tears. In the hum of that descent, the ultimate life lesson washes over her. Arya is not wearing a crown because some savior placed it on her head. She is standing tall because she finally mastered the brutal, beautiful art of saving herself.